that's why we always spend half an hour fucking around on a call before we actually record.
Yeah.
Just to get into the conversational vibe. It's definitely not because we're unprepared from a technical standpoint.
No. This is
I would never
important
accuse you guys of that.
for the performance. And speaking of that, give me 1 second. I need to grab some water for the show. Sup Nerds, welcome to Powerful, the power metal podcast. What was the stinger, the line, Kyle? I forgot again.
The show with powerful metal and even more powerful opinions.
The show with powerful metal and even more powerful opinions. And what's more powerful than checking out an album that hasn't even come out, and at least at the time of recording, and having the author of said album with us. This is a very special episode. As usual, you probably know from just seeing the title. And as always, as you heard, I am joined by my good friend Kyle. And this time we have an awesome guest. Mr. Guest, please introduce yourself to the listeners.
Hello, listeners. It is me, Jake Wright. You may now know me from Panthalassan, my new project.
Exactly. We are so glad to have you here, Jake, again.
I'm super happy to be here again. Thank you so much for having me again.
It's so cool to be talking once again about a new artistic endeavor from you, which we are always so keen on listening and checking out.
It's new and also not new.
Yeah. We'll probably
it's complicated,
get into
really.
Yeah.
So before we get into the inevitable complications of all this, we do have to do the thing, and we have to ask you your top 4 power metal bands. Now, it's been a few years since you were on. Things might have changed from last time, or maybe you're an old man set in his ways. I'm happy to see what you might pick for a top 4 this time.
Oh,
which
man.
hopefully
I
you
think
knew was coming.
I anticipated it a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm stuck in my convictions, though, here, just as far as power metal influence goes. And this doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I don't, say, listen to power metal as much as I used to, which might be true, or that new power metal isn't something that's necessarily ticking all the boxes for me, which is somewhat true. I'm sticking with my original answer. This is from both 4 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, and 4 years ago. It's been a while. I would say Wuthering Heights. I would say Angra. I would say Kios, and I would say Falconer.
You know, I actually did check our last episode with you on to verify what you said, and those were the same for... You actually specified Edu era Angra, which, you know, fair.
Yeah, no, and that's still part of it. Oh, thanks, guys. Well,
excellent. So nice and
consistent.
I guess consistent.
Yeah, it actually matches. We did the homework.
That's good.
Kyle did.
That's my 2-step verification, right? I'm the same person.
The real
I'm not like
Jake,
an imposter. It's the Jake, the right version. Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know.
Hey.
Don't put that in.
All right. Now that all the users have left, we can talk about Panthalassan.
Let's get into the juicy details. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Panthalassan is this brand new. I think Prog Power is probably a fair genre-y justification to give to it. Does that sound right to you?
It does. Yeah.
Excellent. And this is basically born out of, I think we've called it Viathyn 3 in a way, Viathyn being an older project of yours that you were the guitarist for. So what made this Viathyn 3 and what turned it into its own oceanic project?
Yeah, so I don't know if I went into this before. I probably have on the podcast, but just Viathyn was a band that I was in with these two brothers, Tomislav and Dave Srinkovich, and our bass player Alex Cott, and we joined together as a band in 2006, and we started writing demo songs, and we didn't really have a full lineup. Eventually it evolved into Tomislav took up the mantle of the vocalist position, and we put out an album in 2010 called The Peregrine Way, and we put out another album in 2014 called Cynosure. And I am particularly looking back, I'm still quite proud of Cynosure. I think it was a big album for us and for me personally as a musician. So I started writing a follow-up to that in like 2015 or 2016, getting some song ideas together. And, I wasn't really getting a lot of traction with the Viathyn guys on the songs. Like, not that they didn't like it, but it just, I don't think their heads were in the position of, yeah, let's make some more music right now. So I kind of pulled the plug on the project because I basically felt, okay, well, if this isn't going to be a band effort, and that's fine, I understand that. And I understand that priorities and lifestyles and everything kind of change over the years. Let's just go on hiatus, not necessarily forever, but, in an indefinite standpoint, we don't have we're coming back in 2018 or something.
No, we need to come back for the 20th anniversary tour or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Our vast history of touring, of course, never leaving Western Canada. And so, we had a couple different attempts over the years to kind of bring things back. We did some shows with Amorphous and Swallow the Sun in 2017. And then, when COVID hit in early 2020, I just got on this massive, songwriting spree. And I did a big push and wrote a ton of material for Viathyn in that time period. And that was right at the same time that I was actually writing material for the Hubris album that we did with Ravenous. So
right.
it was a very, prolific writing period, I think, for me. And
it was a weird time for everyone in general. Yeah.
Yeah, it sure was. Yeah. Yeah. But, with hindsight, with the wisdom of hindsight, now we can look back and I hope that the silver lining on that time period is that, people did delve into their creative interests a little bit more. I did. So, but maybe that's just my standpoint on it. But regardless, I presented an album to the Viathyn guys at that point. It was 2/3 of an album. And I said, let's turn this into Viathyn 3. And, I still got a bit of a lukewarm response, not necessarily on the quality of the material, hopefully, but more so just on the, it's a big endeavor to put an album together, and it's a lot of work. And I just don't know if that was something that was, super interesting for those guys at that time. So I kind of just
decided
continued
to take it all onto yourself.
Sort of. I mean, I kept writing. I left space to be like, if you guys want to, write some songs, there's room for them. I would love that. I really appreciate, us writing stuff together and us riffing off of each other and that kind of stuff. And then I kind of just kept writing and then the album was done. And, it was over an hour of material that I wanted to include. And I had done all the vocals, sorry, not all the vocals yet, all the lyrics and all the music. And I started thinking about it going, well, I don't know if this is necessarily fair to them or to me to release this under the name Viathyn, because it's not really representative of a group effort, but also B, thematically, it was entirely different. I mean, I started writing this about, very personal stuff that I was struggling with myself. Mm-hmm. And so when I was thinking about how I would present that to the world, or, my small dedicated core of listeners, it just felt like it would be weird if someone else was talking about my mental health struggles. So, I didn't think that this was something that I necessarily wanted to sing for or do the majority of things for. But I had this gut feeling that if I was going to be presenting material of this type outwardly, expressing this kind of vulnerable stuff, I would have to be the one to do it. So I just decided to do it under a new name, which is, a stupid thing to do if you're trying to capitalize on any kind of, past name recognition. This is an uphill battle, and luckily this is esoteric enough that I anticipated that it was going to be a challenge. So
did you ever want to put Jake Wright's Panthalassan on the cover, or just didn't want to overly complicate it there?
I thought about it. I didn't really want to draw that much attention to myself as a person. Ironically, and I don't know if that sounds like it's incongruent with the whole theme of what we're talking.
Ass backwards, but yeah, I get it.
I didn't. Sometimes I feel weird being in the spotlight of things, and even if it's a spotlight of my own creation, like, oh, I did this album, this is a solo project, it's all about me. Putting my name on it would even, I think, feel like that's a step too far. But I don't know if that's just, my internal barriers or whatever.
Well, it's important to get it to a spot where you're comfortable with it. And I think Panthalassan might just be like a weird enough word as it is that it can kind of form its own identity. Now, Panthalassan, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like the giant ocean that existed when Pangea, the giant continent, existed, right?
Yes, exactly. So if we go back in history, a mere 200 million years. Yes, so lots of people are familiar with the concept of Pangea, and it's a very interesting thing that's developed over the last couple decades as the geological societies around the world have understood plate tectonics and the history of the planet. And so Panthalassan was the big super ocean that surrounded that supercontinent. So I put an N on the end of it, Panthalassan, to kind of indicate someone from all seas. Panthalassan means, all sea in Latin. So it's just like a resident from all seas, or someone who came from the ocean. But in a sense, and God, this is going to sound so silly and pretentious, but I wanted to kind of think about, the origins of life on the planet and the history of the evolution of all the different species over the last hundreds of millions of years. We're all from the ocean. We all came from this place. So it's kind of a unifying concept, but also, something that's, a fun geological word.
Yeah, as they say, some fish decided to crawl out of the ocean, and now we all have to pay taxes.
Yeah, it's widely regarded as maybe a bad move.
Yeah.
But, making your own metal album, not a bad move. And especially becoming a vocalist for the first time. You haven't really been like the lead guy on that from your other projects, but that's a big way to step up for this one. How did that go for you?
Well, yeah. So thank you, by the way. I mean, it was kind of a personal goal of mine to try and do it. I've never sang on any recording before, really, other than kind of barking some backing vocals in a sound booth, to be layered up with 10 other versions of, other angry dudes.
Right.
So, I thought, hey, this is a challenge. I like a challenge. It's a project. Let's figure this out. So, I didn't rent. I didn't half-ass it. I just kind of whole-assed it. I was like, I'm going to buy a microphone. I'm going to commit myself to this challenge. And so, I got everything plugged in and I started recording. And I got to say, those first couple of weeks were a little bit eye-opening. It was a bit of a disaster for me.
Eye-opening and ear closing, perhaps.
Ear close, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just, it's so different when you're singing in a room or you're singing in a car or the shower or karaoke when you've had a bunch of beer. And you think, man, I fucking sound awesome. Like, I can do this for sure.
Yeah.
And then I'm listening to isolated, no vocal chain, uncompressed vocals, that were recorded with a good quality mic. And I'm thinking, holy shit, is this what I sound like? That's terrifying. Why did I do this?
Everyone has to go over that first really big hurdle.
It was, yeah. I tore my pants and I pulled my groin jumping over that hurdle. So
was that the biggest, like, oh God, what have I gotten myself into point in creating all of this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But I sat with it for a little while. I worked on it, and I think I got to a place, at least for when I look at this as a piece of art expression that lives as a snapshot in time, as all albums are. I will look back to this point of my life when I was recording these vocals, when my daughter was a newborn baby, and I'm doing this like in the middle of the night in very fragmented time periods, for like 40 minutes at a time, which I know is completely opposite of what you're supposed to do for recording vocals. And I'm like in a self-soundproofed closet in my basement bedroom of our house. And I'm going to look back on that and go, okay, this was, the vocal performance here is kind of indicative of everything that was happening at this period of my life.
Yes.
And also with it being a solo project that, at least like lyrically and thematically, is focused more on your own personal struggles, having that personal touch of your own struggle to become a vocalist, a leading man, if you will, I think just kind of ties it all together there.
You have these. This record is just a record of you at the time. That's probably the coolest thing for me. Like that's what I think when I do my own recordings. Like, oh, I know I could have done this better, but that is me at that time. It's that photograph, but it's not a photograph. It's the audio recording.
Man, look at this photograph.
Look at this graph. Yeah, I mean that goes with basically every recording ever, Fernando. I agree with you totally. It's an interesting snapshot into that part of your life. And at one point you have to kind of practice this non-attachment with it, where you go, I could work on this longer. I could work on this more. I could try to make this absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
But then you kind of have that, diminishing returns thing where perfection is the death of art. And I know that we've talked about this before.
Yeah. Like the most important lesson that anyone working in music, and it applies to a lot of other fields, especially artistic fields, but if you're working in music, you need to know a song will never be done. You just abandon it. There's no, you will not complete it if you try to complete it. You need to say, okay, this is enough. Let's move along, leave it, because you will not finish it. You will not be able to reach that magical point where you will say, oh yeah, I'm done. That just doesn't happen. Don't pursue that.
It is perfect. It is perfect and complete.
Do you need to give yourself just like a set deadline of like, okay, this is where I'm going to cut it off from a date standpoint, or what is it that really kind of like sets you over the line there?
Yeah, because it can be that. It can be having other people to tell you that, yeah, it's done, buddy, and you should listen to that.
Walk away, man.
Yeah.
Do you play poker? Like, you got to know when to hold them, when to fold them, and when to walk away. And you gotta walk away from this table, man.
And the day it releases, you will listen to it again when everyone else is listening to the first time, and you will hear that thing that you didn't notice before, and you will be like, oh my God, how could I let that slip? And that will always happen.
Oh, yeah.
Don't pay attention.
Dude, I've already been there.
Yeah, I know. It's awful, but that's just how it is.
I was listening through to the third single, which is not out, and I know that we'll probably go into this a little bit more, but this is very relevant to what you just said. And I realized when I was editing the timing on the vocals, I was doing this manually because I don't know anything about this, right? This is kind of just my first foray into a lot of this. So I'm manually editing the timing to make sure that all of my words are starting at the same time and all that stuff in my stacked tracks. Mm-hmm. And I edited one of the lead vocals, the first word in the third single. I edited the word a little bit incorrectly at the beginning so that it sounds like I'm saying something else. It's supposed to be the letter R and it's coming out sounding like a W. Like it's supposed to be the word raining and it comes out a little bit like waning. And I heard that and I went, oh no. Like this is the mastered final version of the song.
That happens a lot, and probably nobody else would have noticed it have you not just told them.
Yeah, this is the Streisand effect
now they can check and they will never unhear it. There's a story, small tangent, very very short. If anyone, and I'm sorry for doing this to people, if you're fans of Led Zeppelin, I'm just not going to tell you the song so that you don't suffer it. There's a very well-known song by Led Zeppelin that everyone that loves classic rock, they love it, and they recorded the kick drum with a microphone on the side of the pedal where it hits the skin instead of the usual of it being on the other side, on the resonant side. And in the final record, in every remaster, you can hear the squeak of the spring on the pedal, on the kick pedal. So every time the kick hits, you hear squeak, 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 squeak. And once someone tells you and your ears latch onto it, you will never be able to unhear it.
You have to tell me which song this is.
I'll tell you later. I don't want to say it in public because this is something that I
don't
have.
Put that evil out there, man.
Yeah, it's something that you suffer. Yeah. I've suffered. Like when I learned that they taught me this at recording school, like 10 years ago, and now it's there all the time, and it awful.
Haunts you.
Yeah, and after years, decades of listening to this without issue, and this happens in a lot of well-known records, and this will always happen. And
This
when
is
it's your own
phantom.
work, when it's your own work,
The phantom of John Bonham following you around.
But hey, if it can happen to them, it can happen to you, and it'll turn out okay, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So don't get crazy over it.
Once you've got the album mostly done, I know you did some shopping around with record labels, which you decided to go your own way, I think, is how we'll phrase that afterwards.
Yeah, that's a very polite way to put it. Very diplomatic. I did decide to go my own way. Not that I really had any other options, but that's fine. As I said before, this is kind of, I knew this was going to be an uphill battle, and when I approached these record companies, and there were quite a lot of them. I sent them the album, or at least the current mix at the time, and an explanation of, hey, this is who I am, this is who I've played with, this is my discography and my influences, and here's some songs I hope you enjoy. I didn't really receive a lot of feedback. Mostly it was just radio silence, which is fine. I know that that's kind of something that just happens. The feedback I did receive was a very polite, this is good, this is really good, we like this, but you're nobody.
Yeah.
You're and not in an insulting way, but just they're not wrong. This is a project that has zero presence at the time, zero listeners, zero social media, zero anything. It's just a guy in my basement.
Yeah.
We love it when it's just a guy in a basement. That's what makes it real. But yeah, I guess you're no social media star, which is kind of what I think they're looking for these days.
Yes.
Yeah, and even just the prospect of doing content for this, like TikTok style content, felt very antithetical, I guess, to what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to express. And I just don't care about that stuff.
Yeah,
that's exactly how I feel with podcasts.
That's us. I'm really trying, man, and it's not in me. It's so hard. So maybe this is the episode that gets clips posted around. The first one. It's going to take a lot of work.
Ironically.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I'll have to think about how I feel about that.
It's the struggle. Like why aren't we? I talked to someone and it's like, so how many listicle blogs have you put out? Why is the episode not called the top 5 songs you should listen before you die? And where are the shorts? Where are the shorts, man? And I don't. I'm just talking with my friends.
Wearing the shorts. That's where the shorts belong.
And it's like,
it's still kind of winter here, so yeah.
Man, I totally feel you. Like the work on this album, the contents of the album it would feel so wrong to just see it on a TikTok short doing something that with bright colors or calling your attention.
Yeah, the whole like singing along to the chorus, 8 different versions of my face popping up. I don't know,
with
weird
colorful
Zoom editing
subtitles with everything jumping around,
squishing a cake or whatever they do now to capture your attention.
The Subway Surfers of Panthalassan would just be
like how quickly you flash
weird.
the camera.
But like, and it sucks that that's just the reality, because the labels, like, we know that the Fabio and Luca wanted to do a new band that wasn't called Rhapsody, and that meant, oh no, that I'll not put a cent on you if you don't call it Rhapsody. And that's why they did Zero Gravity as Truly Leone Rhapsody instead of a new artist name, because they wouldn't get funding for absolutely anything, any marketing, no touring, no. They were doing a crowdfunding first just to record the album. And everyone was like, yeah, no, if it's not called Rhapsody, I don't give a shit about you two. And that sounds insane to us as long-time fans, but...
I mean, these men are tent poles in the genre.
Yeah.
Anyone knows who Fabio and Luca are. It's very interesting.
Yeah, but that's how it is. That's the level of, like, you have to be a personality or a known brand to register to a label. You have to be this known entity, already proven, already having a set audience to start off. They will not start you off. You have to come in with the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it would be a risky endeavor for someone like or an entity like a label to fund without that kind of little bit of guarantee on some kind of, earning back on their investment.
But that used to be the business.
Yeah. But hey, here we are. Now we're doing a podcast, and
it
wasn't part of the business back when.
On the
our gain.
On the other side, it's incredible that you can do the whole album by yourself, and we can do the podcast by ourselves, and like because 20 years
obviously
ago,
I didn't.
It would be impossible.
Although I will say you didn't do like everything by yourself. I know you have
I didn't.
a drummer.
I didn't,
you've got our long-time fan favorite Daniel Carpenter doing the orchestrations and whatnot. So so it's not like a solo project, but close enough, we'll say.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I kind of left this open-ended and didn't name it, just to kind of close this circle on why didn't I call it Jake Wright's Panthalassan, is I don't really know what the future holds for this. I want to do more things as time goes on. I mean, maybe next time I'll do even more instruments. I want to play synth on it. I just recently received a bouzouki, which is very cool. I'm very excited. Very excited. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh my God. You need some word, Kyle. What happened? It's a beautiful instrument. You probably have no idea what it looks like.
Yeah, it's just a big boy mandolin, but
yeah.
I want to do more of this stuff in the future. So I don't want to close any of these doors. I actually just want to keep opening them. And by doing vocals, by doing bass, both of those for the first time on this album, not playing bass for the first time, but recording bass, it kind of felt more and more like, yes, this is a bit of a solo endeavor, but I didn't do it by myself. I didn't do all of the recording. I didn't do all of the editing. I did most of it. I did a lot of it for both of those things. But then, my longtime collaborator, Dave Srinkovich, who played drums with Viathyn and with Ravenous, and has basically been on almost every recording that I've ever been on, he's also been on it. So he's a great friend of mine, and so he was the natural pick for drums here. Also because I have no idea how to drum, but that's not to say that I'm not going to try in the future, because maybe I'll take this fully solo. You never know. And then, also our, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man or sassy Birmingham orchestra, Dan.
When you're doing the orchestrations with Dan, like, are you saying like, hey, I want a xylophone here, I want the bells here, or do you kind of just let him loose when you give him the tracks? What's the different levels there?
I'm a big fan of kind of giving, if I'm going to utilize, people that I consider experts in their field, and that maybe a lot of people would, I want to just see what they can do. I don't want to backseat drive the process. I can give a little bit of guidelines, and I have before, of, hey, let's change this, or let's tone this down, or let's tone this up. But in general, I kind of just say, what do you feel is appropriate for this part? What naturally would come to you if you were the person who was, behind the creative side of this?
Yeah.
And I just kind of let them do that. And, for the most part, it works out really great, because there are certain percussive instruments that I wouldn't have put in. There's and we can talk about each track. I'm assuming we will go through it a little bit, but there's a trumpet solo that I wasn't going to suggest that goes there. And I was very surprised the first time I heard it, but it all kind of fits. And so, I really like to let these guys, put their own creative juices into it. If not from like a foundational standpoint, but from like let's decorate this, let's make this look cool and sound cool. And here I am just rambling. So
yeah, I like that approach to, it is like mostly your project, but there are those, we'll say the extra spice coming in there from the other guys as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll mention now at this time that I did have another guest on, my friend Aaron McDowell, who had joined Ravenous a couple years ago. Wasn't really on any of our main recordings, but did a couple solos on our cover album. And so he did a guitar solo on track 6, and also Dan did one as well on that song. So
yeah, in my notes I had like that's the song with I guess there's a lot of guitar soloing in this album in general, but that's the one where you slotted in.
There are fewer than. Yeah. Sorry, I just completely talked over you there. My bad.
No.
It's fine.
There are fewer guitar solos than I think previous albums that I've done, and this is probably has the smallest number. I think I did like 10 or 11 or 12 or something, which is still substantial. But and then had 2 guest solos on that one song, and then there's 2 songs that don't even have guitar solos at all. So
look at you.
I mean, not necessarily at all, but not something I would consider like this is a shred moment.
And then one of the cool things you've done with this album that I don't know if most people will even see is that, at least in like the lyric PDFs that we got, each track has like its own artwork from some like, is this like old public domain art of ocean things? What's going on with all of that?
Oh yeah, okay. I forgot that I sent you that version of that. So that was my kind of working version of what am I planning on doing for a CD booklet if I do go the physical route. And so I did find a bunch of I think thematically relevant public domain old artworks, and most of these are kind of drawings, and and they range from the 1600s through to the early 1900s. Like a lot of them are quite old, and I'm a big supporter of individual artists. I mean, as you guys know, quick tangent on the side here, I commissioned Adam Burke to do the painting for this, and it's a full 2-panel front and back painting, and I think he did an absolutely beautiful job. It's hanging right next to me right now on the wall. I've got the original, and it's something that I have dreamed for a long time, because I've been a long time huge fan of this guy's work.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work with like a metal community at large, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's very prolific and he's quick, and he's got a very distinct style, and I just think it's lovely. So I love the concept of supporting artists in that sense. So then it might seem ironic that I was looking for free old artwork to use as not just the single artworks, which I also did do, but then to use within the CD booklet like you brought up. I just felt like it would evoke the kind of feelings that I was going for with the surface and the beneath the surface themes lyrically for each of these songs. And we'll see if that CD booklet ever sees the light of day. It might. I've received a couple requests to, hey, please do a physical. I'll buy this if you do a physical.
Yeah, having a physical version would be very nice, but I know it's hard, especially without backing of a label.
And that was kind of one of the big pushes for me to try and get some label support, was to do a physical run. And now that I'm kind of doing this independently for now, we'll kind of just see what the future brings with it. And if this is the final format, then that's fine. That's representative of the album itself. So
yeah, and even though you got all these old public domain artworks, at least it wasn't AI. So yay for that.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to use real people artwork, and of course support real artists, and I think that AI artwork, of course, there's a lot of discussion to be had about the future of that and its place or not its place, whatever in the genre, and I guess we'll just see how that goes. But I'm not going to be one to use that.
Yeah, we don't need to deep dive that. But what we can deep dive
already.
is that's it. But what we can deep dive into this big old ocean is the music itself. I know when we have you guys on, we like to really get into each of the individual tracks, what they mean, any cool bits of behind the scenes info. So I think now is as good a time as any to jump into that. And for the first song, Lowstand Leviathans, Fernando and I have been on a crusade recently against the minute and a half long atmospheric intro track.
Yes.
And anyone who doesn't do that, I just want to give a big thank you to. You can just start with a cool song, that still basically works as an intro to the album and has all the individual elements that it needs to say, okay, this is what this project is. So that's my main thing about Lowstand Leviathans, is just a thank you for having a real song.
Yeah, no problem. I wanted to start this off with a bang, you know.
Yeah.
And it starts heavy. It starts hard.
I love to see it. And I think this one also, it gets into like the lyrical style of this album, where, you know, you're touching on these, like, you know, it's about like Leviathans and the ocean and all this, but it's not really about that, because it's more about, like, you know, these personal struggles and like things lurking beneath the surface. And I think a big part of like the identity of this album is combining those two. Themes is one way to put it. I think you put it in the Bandcamp description, described it as like a setting you love while also tackling these things that you struggle with. That's a good marriage of the two there.
Yeah, it's I wanted to do something that was in the coastal setting, in the ocean setting. I thought that there's something very interesting and romantic about the coast, and it's not like just saying, you know, long walks on the beach, which, you know, I know you love those, Kyle. Before California falls into the sea.
That's, you know, the inherent eroticism of the sea, as they say.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to say, actually, it is March 8th, so it is the 1-year anniversary of Sonata Arctica's Clear Cold Beyond. So
the day that I officially fell into the sea.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's appropriate that we're talking about this now. So, but there's something that I always liked about the ocean, about the coast, though, because it's this transition boundary between land and sea, between the known and the unknown, and between, you know, what we're comfortable with and what we are inherently a little bit afraid of. And so I wanted to explore that concept, not just from like a physical standpoint, but also, you know, tying in a little bit of my propensity towards geology, you know, because some of us have, you know, jobs. I'm
really
hitting
the niche of geological metal.
Yeah, a little bit, not as much as some of the others, but you know, touching on, you know, this arc of how does that tie into our experience and the things that we don't talk about and the things that we are a little bit scared to talk about. So I did this album and put it in kind of 3 unofficial acts, like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, where each one is 3 songs, and it kind of follows a general arc. Now, I didn't do this intentionally. It's just the order that things happen to be. And I know that I don't want to assign any kind of just like, oh, look at this random fate, this random chance, but it seems like it flows in the way that it's supposed to for me. So I actually thought about changing the order of the songs, and I realized I can't. This is the way that it is for a reason. So I'm just allowing it to be how it is. So the 3 acts are kind of following these 3 concepts of, you know, admonishment, ambivalence, and actualization, and kind of follows this general arc surrounding these like high stress themes of anxiety and punishment and consequence in the first 3 songs, and then moving through these themes of uncertainty and doubt and skepticism in the middle songs. And then finally, in the last act, exploring these themes of accomplishment and love and ultimately acceptance. And so if I were to kind of do a 1-sentence thing for each song to describe the arc and tie in some of the themes that I'm talking about on the surface and below the surface, I'll say the ocean of our conscience is a dark place, and it's full of monsters and anxiety. And that kind of relates to Lowstand Leviathans. And then moving on, it's what if I'm among those monsters? Like, what have I done in my life to cause pain to others? If I have, then my place is one of punishment. And that's, you know, kind of the theme of Coral Throne. And then if I move on to the 3rd song, it's, you know, if my mistakes have led to losing people along the way, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a broken person. It just means that I have to work on myself. And that's the worth my salt. So then moving on to the 2nd act, it's I got to work to fight against complacency and vices. And that's Driftwood Reverie. And so then I approach these uncertainties in my life with compassion for myself and confidence despite the doubts that I have. And that's the song Foundation to Firmament. And moving on to the 6th song, Clandestine Traveller. Through my successes and failures, I will learn to stop holding myself back. And moving on to the 3rd act, I have to be proud of the growth along the way, knowing that the process and the journey is probably more important than the destination. So that's by Shanksmare. And then I willingly succumb to the warm embrace of partnership and love and becoming more than just, the sum of my parts. And that's Abalone. And finally, for Embers on Our Shore, the last song on the album, I accept my place in the universe in this time amidst the things that I have control over and the things that I don't. And that's kind of the arc of the album. And I really can see how this... Mm-hmm. Thank you. I can see how this can perhaps come across as, pretentious, and I accept that. It's not the intention of it.
Yeah. Welcome to art. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But my intent on this end was really just to, hopefully create something vulnerable and honest and earnest as a human being, but also as, someone that likes to make music in his free time.
And when I was doing a run through of the album, paying attention to all of the lyrics, there were a lot of points where I'm like, oh, this really almost feels like a therapy session of you, like, confronting yourself and like reaffirming yourself. Maybe this is maybe me revealing my like limited scope on these things, but it kind of reminded me of the recent Fellowship album, where they're kind of also taking a look at those like darker things within themselves, but then also overcoming them and trying to like reaffirm yourself. And so I was getting like Fellowship vibes, but taken to a completely like different place musically, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I totally respect those guys as musicians. I love the music that they make, but it's very different from what they're doing.
Yeah. Just from a broad philosophical concept is what I mean, though.
Yeah, because like this is to anyone that can't think of power metal as just singing about video games or funny things and farts. We have this stuff as well. It's not all digging holes, and
it's not all dragons and
it's
memes.
Not all me. It's not all drinking. It's not all just fight battle because battle is fun. No, we have this cool stuff. This is deep.
Yeah,
honestly.
And also, I just want to also put in a little caveat here about this. I don't want this to come across like I'm someone that really, really struggles. I know that if you were to read the lyrics in a vacuum, you'd probably think, "Hey, man, are you okay? Like, do you need to talk about this?" And I'm open about the fact that we're always a work in progress, each individual. And I've done a ton of therapy and all this sort of stuff, and this is just normal human stuff. And I actually do promise that I'm really happy, and I'm in a really good place in my life.
Of all the people I know, I feel like you're the one who seems like it has the things most together. So you're doing fine.
That actually ties into this because, a big part of some of the things that I do struggle with is I sometimes have this inability to express outwardly when I'm not doing okay. And I kind of put on this mask of, hey, everything's fine. Everything's great. And so this is kind of a cathartic way of me, revealing a little bit more of the vulnerable side of things, of being like, hey, guys, sometimes I do struggle with stuff. And of course, I'm going to just say this as a follow up to the caveat. This is exaggerated, this is an art expression. So,
right. Mm-hmm.
When I talk about walking into the ocean and sitting at the bottom of the ocean as a form of self-punishment, like, obviously I'm not doing that. It's just the exaggerated things of, what we feel on the inside. And, so
it's evocative.
Just wanted to put that out there because I don't want people to listen to this and think, I don't know, that I've got a really tough go in life. I know that I have a lot of privilege and a lot of things to be really, really happy about. And it's just about showing that there's more, there's often a little bit more than what can be seen from the outside. So,
and that's why it's about sea monsters.
Exactly, and that's why it's about sea monsters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do you want to do the each song sort of thing and chat about some of the
Yeah, so we've hit on a lot of the lyrical themes here. I also like to dive into just like the straight music side. Like you said, you wanted to open this one with a banger. So that, and I think Lowstand Leviathans is a strong way to do that. Was that just one of your like, hey, I just want to rip. So we're gonna get the people in with that one.
Yeah, I don't know what's what you're supposed to do on an album. Like you start an album with the best song, right? Is that what people do? I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if that's what I did, but yeah, let's just say, hey, this is the best song on the album. It's banger.
It should be
what I wanted to do.
I think it hooks you if that works for you.
What I wanted to do with this one was actually tie in the musical style of the end of the Cynosure album. So the title track Cynosure is actually very similar musically to Lowstand Leviathans on this album. So it's a dark and heavy
through line between projects there.
Exactly, like it's supposed to be a seamless transition. And of course, I wrote this to be Viathyn 3, so it was supposed to be this transition of you finish Cynosure and then you move on to this, and you start with Lowstand Leviathans, and it bridges that gap between that style that Viathyn was doing and the style that this album kind of evolves into over its runtime. So it starts with this dark, heavy song. It's pretty fast. It's like 190 BPM. It's got this technical middle section. It grabs you by the scruff.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about, I think a lot of the stuff we talked about in our recent episodes have been like the shorter songs that are really just there to repeat the chorus 3 times. I think in general your songs aren't like that. Like you said, it's got this like more complicated breakdown middle section. It's got all these different riffs. I don't think there's a song on this album with the chorus done 3 times more than like, I don't know, maybe 2 of them or something like that. So I appreciated the complexity of this album, even for the like easy intro banger song too.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I don't necessarily think this is an easy intro banger song. I mean, I think the middle section of the song would be an absolute bastard to play if I were to sit down and do the whole thing. It's difficult, but
yeah, we mean from the listener's perspective at least.
Right.
Because all of this album is something that kind of like, which is more through composed songs instead of just A B section, and that's really cool. And it just you already show it on the start of the album, so we know what we're getting into.
Yeah, and I know, Kyle, you just brought up that you don't think that there are too many songs that like repeated a bunch of choruses, but this is funny because I think this is the first time that I've actually ever had every song on the album have a chorus. And it's true, every song on this album does have the chorus, and some of them go back to it 3 times. They're not super long choruses for the most part, but they exist. So I was trying to bridge that gap, I think, between like, hey, there are recognizable repeated hooks, also mixed with maybe a little bit more extended structures and maybe a little bit of added complexity, I think, compared to some power metal. Obviously, I like to think this is a progressive album, but it's kind of a mix between both things. I don't think it's progressive enough for the progressive crowd, and I think it's too progressive for the power metal crowd in a certain sense. but I did that intentionally to be a bit of a challenge, but also an ode to that kind of old school prog power from the 90s and 2000s that I love so much and that I don't hear very often anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the band that's like unrelated to you, but it kind of gave me this closest similarity to stylistically might be Tanagra, mixing the more complicated power metal stuff, but it's still not like full on prog, but maybe close enough. That was just the closest reference point that I was able to kind of get there.
Famous band Tanagra that was so confused when they heard that power metal people liked their album and called it power metal. They could not understand what was going on.
They were so confused they dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah, it's interesting, Kyle, that you bring that up because Tanagra, actually, the song "Witness" in particular, was a huge influence on the last song on this album, "Embers on Our Shore." I actually I would say that "Witness" would be the biggest influence of any song out there on that one. So
Witness is one of my favorite songs of recent years. So
I love it too. I think it's excellent.
But Embers on the Shore was one of my favorites from this album too, so that works.
Nice. No, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, yeah, this first song, bridging the gap into the album, tying Viathyn into, Leviathans, and really this kind of song touches on, the concept that not just about sea monsters, but what if our anxieties actually were sea monsters? Can I talk about geology for a second here?
Yes,
Geology
please.
tangent.
If you must.
Please do.
I must. I do. I must, because it's actually important to the title of this song. So
Yeah,
geologically, a Lowstand event is an event where the global sea level is really low. So there's less, near shore deposition in the ocean. A bunch of previously hidden, rocks and material is now exposed to the atmosphere and the elements, and eroded and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to draw a parallel between the geological low stand and what happens to a person and their psyche when they're feeling low, and the stuff that is lurking beneath the surface is suddenly exposed for the world to see. So the concept of this is when we're feeling like shit and it's obvious to everyone else, all of a sudden the sea monsters that are our anxieties are now visible and they're real. And it was just kind of, what do we do about them?
Yeah, that works. I really like that. Well, what works is then you go and you sit in a coral throne, I suppose, which sounds painful.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess, we can move on to song 2 that, of course, like I said before, the best song on the album, but here it is in slot number 2. This one's actually the oldest song on the album. I had music and lyrics for this one unchanged since 2016, actually.
Wow.
So it's quite some time.
Oh,
this
that's
is
like 3
to put that in
lifetimes ago,
perspective.
man.
Yeah. Put in perspective, it's before like Ravenous was a thing, and I spent like 8 years in that band. So
Wow.
yeah, so I had this sitting. We were actually going to perform this song live with Viathyn in 2020 at Hyperspace, but then COVID happened, and we never really made another attempt
Don't
to
remind
get back
me
on
of
the stage.
that
Yeah,
hype.
the 2020 Hyperspace was going to be so sick.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we were looking forward to it, but So yeah, this song. I wanted to mix like some technicality and progressive aspects together, but then also put in like a pop, not pop chorus, but like a repeated hook chorus. Like I was listening to a lot of Symphony X and Leprous and stuff at the time, and so there are like percussive and structural elements from both of those bands, like from tapping and arpeggiated licks in the intro and the kind of like staccato groovy middle section of the song, calling to some of those influences. I was actually unsure about whether or not to include this song on the album because it was from such a different era, but it does fit the theme despite preceding, the conceptualization of the overarching theme of the album.
I think it works. Like on a listen, I would not have been able to tell you that it was outside of the scope of everything else. Like,
I wouldn't have had any idea.
I'm a bit shocked that it's that old compared to everything else because it just fits seamlessly.
Well, that's
Yeah, it
good.
doesn't strike me as like,
that's great.
this is when he was a more immature songwriter or something. Like no.
Oh, fair enough.
Granted,
Well, no,
he's
I'm
been
glad
writing complicated music for a while.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's, something I dabble with, I guess. But yeah, no, this is an old track. It was going to be Viathyn, and for sure, because as I said, we were going to play it live. And then when I started thinking about the concept of the song and what I wrote it about, it tied into something else that I struggle with is, I don't know if this has to do with like me being a firstborn amongst my siblings or anything like that, but I sometimes hold myself to this impossibly high standard of like behavior to the point where, I really internally beat myself up over making mistakes, inconveniencing others, being rude, anything like that, things that we all do and all do as humans. And we're all going to continue to make these mistakes as we grow, right? And so one thing that I'm working on doing personally is preventing myself from punishing myself so hard. So the concept of this song on the surface is about, some unnamed pillager or whatever, regretting the carnage that he has caused and walking into the sea to sit on this coral throne of his own making and crown himself a martyr. And, inherently that's a selfish thing to do, right? Yeah. So I'm using this as a reminder to not make this internal or external spectacle of self-punishment in the name of, I don't know, making atonement for what I perceive as mistakes that I've made.
It's interesting you brought up that as being like maybe an older brother thing, because I'm the younger brother in my family.
How are you?
So I've never had, I think, that same standard of like, I need to like be setting an example or something like that. Fernando, you're an older brother, aren't you?
I am the older brother. I tend to be the older brother of the group of wherever I am because of that. So it is.
I can see that from just the interactions that I've had with you. That really comes through.
Does it? Oh man.
Yeah, it happens so much.
How many siblings do you guys have?
I have 2 younger brothers.
Okay.
3 and 6 years younger.
I have one older brother he's older by 2 years.
But I'm also I'm also on the older half of the school year. So I was always one of the older kids in school every year. And it's very hard to be in a group and not immediately take the role of the older brother of the group in whatever we're doing. And sometimes that's unnecessarily stressful or might come across as like taking over stuff from people, which can be awkward. Doesn't happen much anymore. It used to be a thing like in my 20s. But
yeah, and likewise, I was on the younger end of the school year spectrum, so I think I've always been on the like feeling like the young one. And now that like I'm friends with all these weird internet people who I think are mostly older than me, that's just continued into my life.
Fair enough.
So I'm always the baby apparently, even though I'm almost 30. But we're gonna ignore that.
But
almost 30, yeah.
You can take that. You can rejoice in being the young one always.
Yeah. So I'm always young at heart is how I like to think about it.
It's funny you guys bring up school, the age that you were in school, being on the young end or the old end of the grade. I skipped a grade when I was young.
Ooh.
So I was
really?
I was like a year younger than everyone, and I don't know if that
a real baby then.
Yeah, exactly. Like what was I doing like with my personality when I was 11 years old and everyone else was 12? Was I overcompensating? Was I making myself out to be something that I wasn't? Where does this tie into the themes of this album or future albums? I don't know. Maybe I've just got a
whole album about that.
Yeah, I got a bunch of fodder here. Yeah.
That would be that's too much for me. Like I knew someone that was held back a year, and it was awkward. It was weird. Like it was weird to at first to like understand the dynamic. And then after a couple of months, we all became friends and the difference disappeared. But also, the older you are, the smaller the difference is. The younger you are is when the biggest differences are in age.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, it doesn't
matter now. Like
I'm sure we're all friends with people that are. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It matters a lot less as opposed to like the 3 months making a huge difference back then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump on into song number 3. This was Worth My Salt, also one of the singles from the album. And I was wondering, is having anything about salt in the name, it reminded me of Wuthering Heights. Was that an intentional allusion there?
It was. Actually, I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm huge Wuthering Heights fan. I know that their sound isn't necessarily for everyone, but I just think it's so juicy and there's so much going on and it's so raw and real and silly sometimes. And I think that that's great. I love the Salt album by them. I lament that we haven't heard more. I understand the limitations there with Eric and I think some of his health problems, but I hope to hear more from them in some ways in the future. There's actually a lyrical call out to Wuthering Heights in this song as well. Before the second chorus, I said, "But the road goes ever on."
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is, yeah. I love that song. Love that album. Far from the Madding Crowd. That's a banger.
Far from the Madding Crowd and Salt, I think, are the two of theirs I've listened to the most. I just randomly found it on YouTube back in the day and was like, ooh, it's like folky power metal. This is cool.
Yeah. Have you listened to The Shadow Cabinet?
A long time ago, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it fits in between those two albums, right? So both stylistically and chronologically. So
yeah. They're not the easiest band to like find stuff for, I think.
No, and I respect their conviction for sticking to their values of not having their stuff be available to, in their minds, maybe predatory streaming practices. But
yeah,
man, I just want to put them on Spotify. I have some of their CDs kicking
listen
around.
to some stuff, man.
Yeah, I just want to listen to your stuff. Please make it easier for me. So yeah, no, I was actually listening to a ton of Wuthering Heights when I wrote the first riff, the intro riff in this song, Worth My Salt, which actually dates back to 2005 or 2006. Yeah, so I was in grade 12. I just started Viathyn with Thomas Lav and Dave, and this riff, the intro of Worth My Salt, was on the first and unreleased Viathyn demo. Wow. I think that demo is lost to the ages. I don't remember anything from it. I don't remember any of the riffs from the other songs because, it's 20 years ago. But I remember this one riff. And since we never used it, I, resurrected it, sped it up, incorporated it into this, big silly song.
I love that. I love that. I love that you can reuse something that you had from so long ago that was good enough to stick around in your mind, because if you forgot everything else, like this, like the good one.
Yeah, just for whatever reason, this riff it sounds like 2005.
Now that you mention it, maybe it does a bit.
Yeah.
Now it will stick out, I guess, but it's cool because I like the mid-2000s riffing.
Yeah.
When the single for this came out like a week or so ago, I think you were telling people like, oh, this is like the big, dumb, fast power metal one, which to some extent, yeah, there are parts of that where it really just goes fast. But I think there's more to it than that.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, this is it is the fastest song on the album. I think it's probably the fastest song BPM wise that I've ever released. It's at 220 or something. Is this where I also say that it's the best song on the album? It's the best. It's the best song.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it is the one that like sticks out in my head the most. Maybe just because you say "I'm worth my salt" so damn much in it, and that's just like an easy phrase to latch onto.
Yeah, it's like the token self-help metal song trope.
Yeah. Like when I brought up Fellowship earlier, I think this is the one that most was evocative of that for me, at least lyrically. Just they wouldn't phrase it quite the same way.
No, probably not. And I mean, this is. The concept of this song is about, and I think we've all experienced this, but it's about, times in my life where I've experienced the loss of friendship. And it really makes you introspect. It makes you wonder how much of, a role you played in these events. Or does it lie with the people that you're no longer friends with? Sometimes these are dramatic public friend breakups. Sometimes it's kind of like people slowly fade away from your life. But I know that people are familiar with this concept, and it's a real hit to the self-esteem, So a major theme about this song is like looking inward and seeing how much of my own behaviors have influenced the losses of friendship that I've experienced over my life, and kind of starting that process of rebuilding self-esteem, because it's not necessarily reflective of you as a human being when this happens.
Yeah. I totally understand that.
And so like it's something that I did structurally with this to demonstrate that is, the chorus of the song kind of grows over the course of the song. Like it kind of starts out with, chorus A/chorus B at the beginning. And then it goes chorus A, chorus B, post-chorus the second time. And then at the end of the song, it's chorus A, chorus B, post-chorus B. And to kind of show that even over the course of this song, those affirmations of, yeah, you know what, like I'm worth my salt, that is internalized a little bit. And then, of course, I punctuated the song with a big, silly AC/DC Dragon Force mashup middle section of stupid Guitar Hero stuff. So it doesn't have to be all serious, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. That's why we're here at first. You get us, like, you catch us with all those riddly diddlies on the guitar and the big, all the riffing, and then we'll eventually actually might learn something about ourselves in the way.
We explore those hidden depths here.
Yeah, it's about being a grower and a shower. I don't know. Sorry, I had to the one
So speaking
token
of
dick
wood, we can talk
one
about
token
wood.
dick joke. Yeah. Speaking of wood, you mean the best song on the album, Driftwood Reverie?
Yeah, so the best song on the album is Driftwood Reverie.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my favorites though. I think on my first listen, I think this was definitely one of them. I like the sort of folky style to the guitar in this one.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of a bit Ensiferum in that main riff.
Oh yeah, I can hear like some old Ensiferum in there too.
Yeah, except it's got like a 6-bar resolve and not a 4-bar resolve. But that's the.
Oh, we're not amateurs over here, Jake. What do you take us for?
Yeah, exactly. No, you guys are experts in the genre. I mean, you're trusted experts. That's why I'm talking with you here right now.
Exactly.
Just promise to not ask anything about the topic, and then we're fine.
I'm not allowed to ask you questions. This isn't like a job interview or anything where I have to determine if you did you guys do your homework well enough. Like, did you
bring
listen?
up work-life balance, and that's a red flag right there.
No, this is not your work. This is your life. This is fun. You're doing this. You're choosing to do this. No one is paying
That's
you
true.
to do this.
No,
That's not true. We
well,
do have like 5 people on Patreon.
Yeah, God bless those
That's
patrons.
God bless those people who's
keeping you guys afloat. Yeah, they're keeping you guys floating like Driftwood to
Like
segue back
Driftwood,
into our.
who's in a reverie.
So this
so
song's like
tell us about
a bit of
Driftwood
everything. Hey? I mean, musically, it's like a bit of everything. It's got it's kind of why I chose it as the first single for the album, because it's not only is it one of the shorter songs, which I think ties into what we were saying about potentially shorter attention spans of people, including sometimes myself. But it's got a bit of everything. It's got big riffs, it's got chill moments, it's got some speedy shred moments, it's got folkiness and prog and power metal and cool drums and cool bass, and it just kind of felt like a little bit of a preview for this is the kind of stuff you're going to hear on this album.
Yeah, speaking of all of the guitar stuff we're talking about, I think this is one of the songs where the whole ending is like a minute or two of just like shredding.
Yeah, it kind of ramps up too, because it kind of starts riffy and then the riff gets a little bit bigger and then it gets harmonized and then it kind of becomes a twin lead scenario with some little shred moments, and then it turns into like full harmonized sweep tap arpeggios and stuff. It's kind of a fun little let's see where this goes. Let's see how this ramps up.
Which almost feels like a weird thing to do for a song about drifting. I guess it's at the end where it picks up there.
It's at the end, and that's intentional because the concept of this song is about procrastination. It's really easy as a human being to fall into that easy track, like the one more mentality. Like, oh, I'll have one more beer, or I'll watch one more episode of this TV show, or I'll sleep for one more hour. And the hard thing to do, obviously, is to like get off your ass and get shit done. And that's something that I've tried to work at a lot over the years on self-discipline and self-control, to be a doer and not just talk about doing stuff and not just dream about doing stuff, but to just fucking do it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always come naturally. It didn't come naturally to me. I had to work on that. And so this song is kind of about, channeling that. I'm going to go into some more like Eastern mysticism stuff that my wife knows a lot more about, but like chakra 3 energy, that fire that lives in your sternum, and creating, be it like creating music or doing a personal project, or cooking a huge meal, building big muscles in your ass. I don't know, just I love swimming in the juice of the process. I love working to try and get good at something. And this probably ties back to the previous thing that I talked about, holding myself to high standards. But this is about, getting off your ass and just doing the thing. And so that speed up at the end of the song, that riff, that ramp up is the carpe diem moment of I'm doing the work.
Doing the work of shredding.
Doing the work of shredding. And maybe that's, getting those short-term dopamine hits. Get that shred. That sounds fucking cool. But then you get that long-term serotonin hit from I did the work. And that's kind of what this song is about, is, stop drifting. But you don't have to. I mean, this is about me stopping drifting. But it's easy. It's easy to drift. It's easy to float in the sea of paint. And instead of, using that paint to make something, or to paint something, I guess. Shitty metaphor.
No, I definitely get that as someone is very good at making excuses to himself to procrastinate or to keep doing what he's doing. I can totally get that. Just like when you get over that hurdle of like, okay, I'm just going to actually get this thing done. I'm actually going to make the thing. Like it does feel good when you actually get to that point.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this song really does a good job of capturing that.
No, thanks, man. I'm glad that that's a not necessarily a universal concept, but something that I know that you guys feel. Not that I'm accusing you guys of being procrastinators, but
I'll admit
with
to
doing
it.
something like
yeah. It's not a secret.
Well, then, if it resonates with you guys on a personal level with that, then good. That's what this is for. But I fucking love procrastinating sometimes, man. Like it feels so good to just, I don't know, doom scroll. I don't have time to do that anymore, so
that's good. That's better for you.
Yeah, and you said you don't have time to do that. I assume having a kid is a big part of that. And speaking of having a kid, the next song, Foundation of Firmament, I do want to jump ahead a little bit. Yeah. I mentioned that song ends with a baby.
Yeah.
And I what's going on with that?
That's not just a baby. That is, of course, that is my baby. That is our baby.
I was wondering if I'm like, did this guy just straight up record his baby for his album? And it sounds like that's a yes.
Yeah. So, I'll get to it, but it is thematically relevant to this song. But yeah, at the very end there, just a little squealing and cooing. That's her as a very young baby, almost a newborn. And so this song, I wrestled with this one a lot. It's probably the most personal, probably the most emotional, and likely will be one of the more diversive tracks on the album. And so the root of this song is kind of in the concept of family, the concept of what is passed down between generations, nature versus nurture, and ultimately the massive amount of uncertainty that I and we being myself and my wife, felt in the process of deciding to take that plunge to start a family. And, it's not an easy decision. It's probably the biggest decision we've ever had to make. And probably has the most short and long-term ramifications of any decision that we have made up to this point. And so I had to color the music and the lyrics with my experiences too, and my fears, and put myself in the shoes of both a parental figure, but also someone who's a child. I am a child of parents. This isn't really about my parents, but it's about me. So I wrote this song out to play out musically and lyrically like it's an argument. And I put myself in the position of both sides of this argument, both as the parental figure and as the child, and incorporated some of what I think are my worst qualities into each to demonstrate, once again, how easy it is to fall into those tracks of behaviors, depending on the style of the argument. So the flawed parent part of me, and of course this was written, long before we had even decided to have our daughter. So the flawed parent part of me
ended up like fitting that way then.
No, it did. Like, I mean, because I was, of course, I wrestled with the uncertainties of this decision for quite some time, just because, you want to make sure that you're doing things for the right reason. And obviously it's not something that you want to take lightly. So I had to think about myself. I had to project what would I feel as a parent back before I was a parent. So I wrote this flawed parent version of myself, and I wrote that side of the argument as arrogant, privileged, well-focused, self-centered. And I wrote the flawed child part of me is written as emotionally reactive, people-pleasing, cowardly in the face of confrontations. So really, I'm just asking myself with the lyrics of the song, would I do a good job as a parent? Would I focus on the things that are actually important over, winning an argument? Will I choose to communicate, seek understanding despite the differences that I inevitably will have with my children? Will I choose to not be reactive, not to escalate, like choose my battles, even if what we might be arguing about in a hypothetical situation would be, foreign to my understanding? And so musically, I kind of tried to make that happen as well with this. I tried to make it play out a little bit like an argument. So there's a huge amount of hard changes in the song where it goes from one feeling to another very quickly.
Yeah, this is one I kind of struggled to, I guess, make sense of when I was first going through it. I mean, you've got like those strange, well, is this one, like you said, the trumpet solo? You've got the one of the person talking about being like overpowered by stuff. There's just so much going on here.
Yeah, and it's got weird time signatures, huge contrast in this like mood and feeling, these fluctuating percussive styles. It's got like long acoustic bits with, very raw back and forth, very upfront vocals that are, talking about uncertainties and insecurities and stuff. And as with the rest of this album, I guess. But I think this example is probably the most blatant, perhaps, on the album. I knew that this one would be challenging for people, but I put it as the centerpiece of the album, the middle song, not necessarily the centerpiece, but I might actually be serious when I say I think this is the best song on the album.
Well, yeah, it's the best song on the album, like we said.
Of course, like obviously, it's track number 5. It's the best song on the album.
I think this might be the most interesting one to look at. So let's say 20 years from now, when your little kid is all grown up, and they can say, "Wow, I'm on this album," and see like how did this end up reflecting on you as a parent, and what you thought might happen, and then what ended up actually happening. This is probably way too existential for you to think about now. But
no, I am thinking about it, and that's exactly the point. That's I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for that. That's very insightful, actually.
Yeah, it's the most time capsule thing in the album so far that you will actually need to reflect on it. Maybe need is a strong word, but I'm sure it will come up.
I'm sure it will, and I mean at the same time, I'm happy to have. Especially now that my daughter's running around the house and climbing on top of the counters and just saying and doing hilarious things. This is a time capsule moment of she was a tiny little baby that I held in my arms up to the microphone, and she just kind of cooed into it. And so, of course, as we said, the song ends with 10, 12 seconds of her making funny noises, and that kind of is indicating that. We did make that decision. And I hope it just signifies that, hey, things are going to work out despite the anxieties that I have, because I will say right now that like being a parent has been like an incredible life-changing privilege to be able to experience on my end. So I'm absolutely glad that we took our time in making that decision. And the anxieties are always going to be there because you always want to be the best version of yourself. But the definition of that changes in the roles that you play over the different stages of your life. And so this is a new one for me. And it's only been less than a year and a half since she was born, but everything is different now, but in a great way.
Yeah, what I saw someone say a while back was when you have a kid, it's amazing how fast your life becomes not about you anymore, which is something I always think about with that when I confront, like, do I want to have kids? Like, oh God. Because like I'm nowhere near wanting to do that, at least right now in my life, but it is interesting to always get someone else's perspective on that.
Totally fair.
And a little bit older.
Yeah, I got 6 years on you, but we're fine. And that's the thing, man. Like even and I don't want this to come across as like I am so wise, I have 6 years on you. But when I was when I was your age, when I was just about 30. I didn't have any certainty on this either. It took many years for us to come to this decision. And so anyways, I just wanted that kind of, as Fernando, you said, this is the most time capsule thing. It probably is. This is very indicative of this, previous stage of my life. And so ultimately this is, I would say probably one of the most important songs on the album for me personally. And I mean, it also helps that it's fun to play. It's fun to noodle around with.
Nice.
There's a fucking trumpet solo in it. Like it's a weird song. I know that, but
yeah. So was that just you saying, "Hey Dan, go for it," or did you say, "Fuck man, this needs a trumpet solo"? How does that even come about?
I had no idea, and I give Dan full credit for the fact that he did that completely on his own accord. Yeah. It was one of the first 2 songs I think that he sent me the orchestrations for. And
so when he does he just come at you and say, "Okay, hear me out, Jake," and then you have to hear him out, and you say, "Damn, this actually works."
Yeah. Sometimes he just goes, "Yeah, let me know what you think," knowing he's waiting with like bated breath of he's gonna get to that part, and it's either gonna work out or I'm gonna get a message saying, "Hey man,
what the fuck?
I appreciate what you're doing here, but maybe not this time." And there was a moment later on in the album, and I'll talk about it when we get to the end of the album, but it's specifically about the end of the album where we had to have that conversation, which is fine because this is a back and forth. So when he sent me the trumpet, I was like, "Fuck yeah, man, that sounds dope." Are you kidding me? I never would have thought to put that there, and I think it really works actually. I don't know. What do you guys think? You guys are some of the only people who've actually heard this at this point. So.
I've listened to this album a lot throughout especially this last week, as I knew we were doing the interview now, and it also kind of struck me like, outside of the people who actually made this album, I've probably listened to it more than anyone else in the world, which was also kind of a weird thought.
You get an award for that. You get to yes. to put that up on your mantle.
Yeah,
I truly am become powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I think this is the one I've maybe struggled the most to kind of wrap my head around when I think about it, just because it does so many things, and I in a way I really do respect that. But I think I'm always having it end with the baby stuff, not knowing all this extra context that I now know, always left me just that extra level of confused. And it all makes sense now. Of the song almost being like an argument. So I that's my favorite part of doing these deep dive chats, is just getting all these things where I have to where previously I had to just completely speculate on, which is its own fun, sure, but having it solidified in my mind makes it much more satisfying to listen to in a way too, because it's like, yeah,
fair enough. And I appreciate that you guys are giving me this kind of little platform here to be able to go into the reasoning and the explanation for everything. A big part of me wants to let this speak for itself and let people come up with their own conclusions or whatever. But this is also a good opportunity, for me to actually talk about what was going on in my head when.
Yeah, I didn't mention it earlier, but one of the earlier songs, I almost thought the lyrics were meant to be about Impostor Syndrome, but then you talked about it being about losing friends, and I'm like, wow, I was really fucking off here.
It's so funny, and this would be the excellent segue into the next song, because that one is about Impostor Syndrome.
Wow, amazing. Let's talk about Clandestine Traveller. I definitely planned that.
Well,
how
hey,
clandestine
well done, man.
that we can travel to this song now.
Ooh, I like that. So if you guys or the listener are familiar with the 2014 Viathyn album Cynosure, this song is very intentionally a sequel to the song The Coachman. It's in the same key, same general style, same types of musical contrast. There's several similar structural elements within this song, alternating between the clean and dirty in the verses, the 3 guitar solos in a row. As I mentioned before, second one was done by my friend Aaron McDowell, and the third one by our friendly neighborhood Dan. Impostor Syndrome. It's got a bunch of, what else is in here? A bunch of Opeth influence, I think. I don't know if you guys heard that, but I have been a long time fan of Opeth, and I put I think a few intentional references to their music in this.
I'm not a massive Opeth guy, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I'll believe you. I'll trust you.
Fair enough. That's totally okay. Did I also mention this is the best song on the album?
Oh, okay.
Oh, you didn't. No, that's
I was wondering.
To know.
Okay. Yeah, this is the one.
Because it's you got to kill your babies, but no, you love your babies is what I'm hearing. This one's the best one. Okay.
Yeah. So talking about Impostor Syndrome, this is obviously something that I have definitely wrestled with often. do I live up to my own standards or other people's expectations? Am I afraid to embrace the successes that I do have, or feeling like I'm just a passenger along for the ride in my own self? And so that's the Clandestine Traveller,
And is that what made this the song, I guess, appropriate to have the guest solos on? Of like, I guess you could this is where this is the collaboration song. This is the external validation song. I don't know. I'm throwing all these ideas out here for you.
No, I mean, I'm glad for that insight, because I didn't think about that way.
Yeah.
And maybe subconsciously, man, like,
maybe
you've tapped into.
I need a real guitarist.
This is a podcast, not like a psychoanalysis. Yeah, exactly. Well, I was a little bit worried about that, just because not that I feel like I don't know how to play guitar. Like, obviously I can play guitar, but Aaron's an excellent guitar player, and Dan, as we know, is an incredible guitar player as well. So, having these guys able to show some of their chops on here too was fun. This is actually the first guitar solo that I wrote and or recorded for this album. I don't really write guitar solos. I kind of just start recording and see what happens for the most part. And so when I did this one, I was thinking, well, I hope this solo is like good enough to stand up to these other dudes, or else I'm
better
really
get insurance and get extra guitar solos on this one.
Exactly. Just like fulfilling the is this a self-fulfilling prophecy, this song where I think I'm not good enough? Yeah. I don't have that feeling. I'm happy with how everything turned out, but
yeah, when I saw the notes on this one of like, first and second and third guitar solos, I don't know where exactly you're drawing the lines in the song, like, this one ends at 4 minutes and 12 seconds or whatever, like, so I'm just gonna lump it all together and say everyone did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, when you listen to them, it's 3 solos in a row, with like a little riff in between each of them. And it's kind of in that second half of the song. I guess it does come back to some different musical themes and lyrics that are touched upon earlier in the song, just in a different time signature at the very end, the clean bit. But it's before all of that, and each guitar solo is really only like 10 seconds long. Like, they're short little snippets, little fun guys.
A song of fun little guys made by a bunch of fun little guys.
Just fun little mushrooms just kicking around on this coach, ambling towards the coast, or whatever the fuck I'm talking about here. Yeah, I don't know. This is a fun one to me. I think it was the last song that I wrote for this. And it was just I felt that something in the overall musical theme of this album, I thought it was missing. Kind of this, dark, high contrast, spooky sounding song.
I like the dun 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 dun, but having it be like that, like it almost would be like a fun melody, but it's done in this like spookier, darker style. It's a nice little take on it. Yeah,
and I did want to have a little bit of that kind of spookiness feeling, and of course this is very, very much an intentional throwback to The Coachman. So if you were to listen to these 2 songs back to back, which ironically enough I haven't done, but I should, to make sure that it actually does fit with what I'm saying here.
And you haven't just completely hallucinated this whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Who are you guys? What are we doing?
Yeah, I need to go back. I didn't do my Viathyn homework as much
honestly,
as I should have on all this.
I didn't do that. Now I am surprised. There's much more to be gained if you're familiar with your previous albums than when you listen to this one. So everyone that's listening to this episode and hasn't listened to the album should first probably listen to Viathyn albums.
Yeah, and specifically the Signature album, the 2014
specifically
one.
The Boat
that
album.
Yeah, I've got a version of it on my wall that I'm looking at right now. In those like CD display cases.
Oh, that's so cool.
Anyways, that is good homework for this if you're so inclined. I do believe that this is a standalone entity, but perhaps your listening experience will be enhanced by
exactly. Yeah, because
hearing
like you might gain more out of it if you have that previous, but it's not mandatory.
All right, so we go from a coachman down to Shank's Mare, which I was not familiar with the expression of by Shank's Mare, so I googled it. Turns out it's basically it's like a British saying for walking, or like going by your own feet. So I learned something thanks to this. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad that you looked it up. Yeah, obviously that kind of is by Shank's Mare is the response to the hypothetical question. How did you get here? For the listeners, shank being the lower part of your leg, and mare referring to a horse you would have ridden. Basically, a tongue-in-cheek way of saying I walked here with
legs.
my feet. Yeah, I actually wanted to name the first Viathyn album in 2010 by Shank's Mare.
So this has been kicking around as a phrase in your head for a long time.
Yeah, it's just been bouncing around in there, bouncing off of a beer. So I did want to use this for quite some time. So I'm happy it kind of found its place here. This is the Saint Beyond the River track, the Celtic influenced.
Okay.
Sing song, perhaps plagiarizing Old Lang Syne, which Dan informed me of, and I hear it. Grab a pint, grab a lass or a lad or another pint and do a jig. So yeah, it's the best song on the album.
Yeah, of course. This one's one of my favorites as well. This is one where I think the chorus really stands out to me. Like the many years I've traveled and all of that is a very comforting, uplifting style of chorus. I know you said this is the start of Act 3. This is the self-acceptance and affirmation part of the album.
Yeah. This is about like being proud of your own accomplishments, like not letting yourself be held back by that aforementioned imposter syndrome feeling. It's kind of about celebrating achievement, but not in a way that, how do I say this? Like not in a way that suggests that accolades or recognition are the goals, but in a way that chews the scenery, enjoys the journey to get to your destination. A way that recognizes the process and the craft of creation and the growth that comes from that effort. And so that's kind of what I was trying to evoke with this one and tie back into the title theme of, it's about walking. It's about making your way there slowly. Fernando, you've done a ton of music. I know that you understand, how much effort goes into making an album.
People don't know. People have no idea, man, how much effort it is.
And so I kind of, that relates a lot to what I was talking about with this song. Like many of my close friends, my family, obviously I love and appreciate their support, more than anything, but they probably don't really understand the amount of work and effort that goes into something like doing an album from scratch, right?
Yeah.
Having all these spinning plates kind of, precariously balanced on various sticks all over the place. It's a shitload of work.
Yeah.
and it's hard to convey that.
Yeah, because they have no way of understanding really if they aren't into whatever you're doing. Like most people aren't musicians. Even some musicians don't know other types of music, what it takes. If you're not talking to someone that knows, you cannot expect them to understand, but it's still frustrating that they don't understand.
It's always, especially like doing the podcast, like I always think about the Ratatouille bit of like, even like the most mediocre bit of anything has had more like work and thought into it than my meaningless criticism demoting it as trash or whatever. So it's always important to remember the process that goes into the creation, to always be proud of that too.
I actually had a conversation once related to this feeling. I have a cousin that's a singer, and she put on this special show to showcase her own songs and invited a lot of people. Like the little small venue filled up mostly with friends and family, and she put on this really cool show with specific costume changes, not costume, but like dress changes and lights, and everything was very well planned. And it was a great show, and everyone was like congratulating her on like making this great show. That's awesome. You make it seem effortless, like you're so good at this. And then we had a conversation later, and I was like, hey, how did you do the lights thing? Like it's like getting the colors and everything in sync with the songs. And she was like, oh yes, it was so much work. It took like 2 weeks to figure it out and design the thing, and nobody understands, nobody knows. Everyone says, oh, the show was so great, bye. And
But you did.
But
you noticed.
So because I know we could have this extra conversation, we were talking for a couple hours about the intricacies and the hardships of putting on a show like that. Sometimes
I like to think when it comes to those details where nobody even explicitly says it, it's one of those things where, you know, their subconscious picked up on it and it enhanced the show even if they didn't think about it. I like to think that's how it works.
The thing is,
at least.
what they pick on is that it's good. That's all.
Yeah.
That it successfully goes over the threshold of that was good. But that doesn't begin to explain how hard or how much work in time and effort it meant for the people doing it so that you perceive it as good. For them, it's just one thing that happened on those 40 minutes of show, and that's it, and not the 6 months of work before. And that can be frustrating. So you always, it's good to have someone that understands the things that you're doing, so they understand what you went through, even though you know it's not relevant in the end for the final product for the people. It's like the audience doesn't know; they don't need to know. It's unreasonable to expect them to understand that.
Yeah, but it all ties into the final quality of the product, right? Without having to be explicitly stated. You know, they know. They've got to recognize. I mean, I as an audience member, if I go to a play, I love doing that. By the way, it's something that I wish I had more time to do. I know how meticulous everything is planned, and I don't think I would be worth my salt in that sense. I don't think I could. I don't think I could do anything like that. And I love watching people who are passionate in their craft. Yeah, do something like that. So that all ties into this thing. Like these things take a lot of work behind the curtains. There's a lot of things that don't get that's not common knowledge, and for this album, for me, there was a lot of that stuff that I had never done before. I had just been part of a band where I would help with certain aspects, but I kind of had to do all the behind the curtains aspects, especially in the post section of this, doing all the liaising with we haven't talked about it yet, but I'll take this opportunity with Damien Rainaud, who did the mixing and mastering. I think he did an excellent job on the mix. I think it sounds lovely, and he handled a lot of layers and did a pretty great job showcasing all of the different elements. And I will mention that there is an instrumental version of this album that I also had him do, and it comes through even really, really well with that, because there's one fewer element to mix in. When you don't have my vocals sitting in there, it's just a whole. You hear the instruments a little bit better, and things are mixed a bit differently in there, and it's lovely. So he did an excellent job. I'm really happy with the work. I know that most people will probably know him as the guy who has done production on the last several Dragon Force albums, but he's also doing Fear Factory. He's the drummer for Glyph, and he's in a couple other projects, multi-instrumentalist. So very talented and very involved guy when it came to doing this mix and master. We went back and forth for months, and he was very accommodating and capable at what he was doing.
Yeah, sounds like a guy who really gets around in the music side here.
Yeah, I know. I mean, no wonder he's so busy. He's he's good at what he does in a lot of ways.
Are there any specific aspects of the production, since we're talking about all this work into details that no one will notice? Sure. Is there anything that you want to single out as something you're really proud of that no one's even going to think about, that you put a fuck ton of work into for this?
That's honestly, that's a really good question. I wish I had an answer for you at this moment. I think most of the things kind of came through, and once again, having the opportunity to kind of talk about the behind the scenes thoughts towards the themes on this album, that's, I think, mostly what I'm proud about, because I've been accused before of only writing songs about epic quests. And
so we love epic quests, though. Yeah, come on, guys, it's metal.
I took that personally, though. I was like, all right, fine. I'll write songs about tough stuff. No, as far as individual kind of performance things goes, and little technical elements, I think just balancing everything to have, the drums fit with the guitars, to have the bass fit with the drums, to have the vocals fit, hopefully, over everything that I had not written for myself to sing. That in myself is, I think, something that I would call attention towards, mostly just because it was a big deal for me to do.
Was the original intention to have Viathyn's vocalist when in the very early days of all this?
Yes, yeah. I wrote this with the intention of having Tomislav sing this, and hey, I'm not ruling out that we'll not do stuff in the future. I just saw him last week. We hang out all the time, but I wrote that for him to do, and then I actually pivoted when we decided that we didn't have time to do this as Viathyn. I had another previous vocalist that I've worked with a lot, that you guys know, signed on to do this vocally. I then had a gut feeling that it would be a good idea for me to do it myself, as this is a personal solo project. So I just decided to do that. And for various reasons, I'm happy that that's the way that this turned out. And this really opens a door for me, I think, because I would love to keep exploring vocals. They were so fun to do and so challenging. And just recording 8-part vocal tracks with a bunch of harmonies and stuff, and I've never done this before. That's really the thing that I would probably personally call attention to on this, because it's the biggest change from anything that I've ever done. And I've done.
It seems like that really opens up a whole new avenue for you as just a musical person to be like, oh yes, I am doing lead vocals here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I'm happy with the way that they turned out. I know that they're not conventionally power metal, but I hope that the emotion and the as I was talking about, being earnest before, I hope that comes through in the tone that I sang it in.
Yeah, I think it makes it more earnest is probably the biggest strength that goes along with it being a more personal project. It's not someone else singing your words and feelings that might not be as appropriate depending on which part of the music it is.
What's more,
I think it would take away from the impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that there necessarily would be. I mean, a lot of people might listen to this, or however many modest listeners this ends up getting. Not to be hard on myself, but I know that this is esoteric and niche material. Who knows how many people are going to dive into the themes? I mean, I know a lot of people don't listen to lyrics, and that's totally fine. I've been there in different stages of my life and my listening, but some people might get it, and some people might, connect with some of these concepts, and I hope they do. All this work. Let's segue into the next one, I guess, right?
Yeah, let's slow things down and talk about Abalone here a little bit.
So yeah, the ballad. Well, too bad.
Quote unquote ballad. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how you made the ballad the best song on the album. Jake,
I know.
How did you do it?
So unexpected. Cannot believe it.
You know what? I know that we're kind of jesting a little bit, but I am actually very proud of the songwriting on this song, and by the time that this episode airs, this song will have come out as the third single, the last single before the album release on March 28th. So we'll see if anyone else agrees with me, but that's that they don't have to. And frankly, you guys don't have to either. I'd love to hear what you do think about it, but I'm pumped about this song. I actually love the song.
I will not take this. I am not a ballad hater. I hate the ballad haters. I just like good songs, and I like things that sound cool. This sounds cool. It works in the context of the album. It's perfectly fine. Like everyone
that's a ringing endorsement.
If people hate it, I say this because if people get angry just because it's slow, or where's the guitar? Why is the vocals alone? What is this sappy thing? Just enjoy the fucking music. God damn it. Makes me so angry.
And It would be hard for people to maybe tell with this one because of the lack of drums in most of the song. But there's so many time signature changes in here. It goes in this like descending order through 7/4 to 6/4 to 4/4 times, several times in the song.
I didn't count it, but I was wondering if you were that much of a nerd to actually make it descending. I'm happy with the answer, honestly.
I was trying to give this feeling of intimacy and immediacy with as the song goes on, as the sections change, it gets more and more easy to digest, and then it kicks you back into that 7/4 time again. And it's subtle because there's no drums to tell you that, and it's just clean guitars in the background and kind of meditative, ethereal, mellow, haunting style, music tone and vocals, and it's not heavy, but this is musically quite dark. And so I think it's different from a lot of power ballads and stuff in that sense. This is the least power metal song on the album by a long shot, I would say.
I think that's fair to say. And that doesn't mean it's bad. People that think like that, I know you exist. You always
I know lots of people do. Everyone says, "Oh, slow, bad, whatever." I love ballads. I love good ballads. I think about certain bands like Symphony X, even Angra to a certain extent, like a lot of bands like this, where sometimes the ballads are, for me and for my taste, far and away the best songs on the album.
Yeah.
And because it's so cheap to just have the token ballad, like, oh yeah, I got to do a slow song and I'm going to put it in the penultimate position, ironically, which I did do, but whatever.
Yeah. You didn't really get away from the cliches of like slow song, second to last, big song last, but it's a cliche for a reason. I mean, it does work.
Yeah. I mean, I think it works with the flow, but also with the theme of the album and everything too. But anyways, I didn't want this to be like a cheap, I need to have a slow song. I was working on this song for quite some time. Once again, one of the riffs in this song, not really riffs per se, one of the melodies in this song goes back to, a similar time period of, the late 2000s in a song that I kind of had as, a love song for my wife, for my now wife. Because we've been together for quite some time, and yeah. And so she actually proposed the song idea to me years ago, which I semi-adopted, about like a mermaid that is the last of her kind, and she's alone and she needs love. And I thought that this was like a poignant and sad and beautiful concept. So I kind of started working on it as a song. It kind of evolved more into a song about adaptation. Like on the surface, it's about, much like the Haken song of a similar style, a man who physically changes himself into an aquatic being in order to be with this last mermaid. But in the context of my life, it's about the small sacrifices, the little changes, the things that you do not to like alter yourself, but that both you and your partner do together in order to grow together as time goes on into something beautiful, into something unified, into something that's larger than the sum of your individual parts. And that is such an important part. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. That's a big part about, I've been with my wife since university, it's been 18 years, and naturally over long time periods like that, people change. We're completely different people than we were at that time. But I'm not quiet about it. I adore my wife, and I'm very fortunate to have someone like her at the center of my life. And a big part of that and the theme of this song is it doesn't have to be bittersweet that you make little changes to your life to grow together, because I appreciate more than I can really express in words that this is where my life is, and with her in that position for me. So so this one's like, very, very personal, but it's a sad love song, but it's not
sad, but not like sad, sad, I guess.
Exactly. It's mellow. It's the tone of the song and the general evocative feeling of kind of mellow sadness that comes from the melodies is not representative of my actual feelings of it. It's just, the way that these things come out.
It's like, oh man, my wife, man,
Yeah, exactly.
It really makes me feel mellow.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I guess at first sounds bad, but it's not like that.
No, it's not that at all. It's about, people willingly look and reflect on themselves and make these small adaptations, but everyone does it with everyone around them. I mean, anything to do with being comfortable around different people, the different types of language that you use to different types of people and people that you've known for a long time. I don't know the term for that. Is that code switching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But stuff like that. And the thing is, there are things that everyone does, and to sorry, I lost my train of thought again. There are things that
it's like you said, it's like you can make these, you can call them little sacrifices or little changes to yourself over time to as you adjust your life to be with a partner or different friends or just wherever you're at in your life, and that can be a thing to look back on and maybe reminisce about, the good old days. But it's not strictly a bad thing that you are making these changes for yourself or for someone else, just to make life go on, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's about the journey, and we are ever evolving creatures. No one is ever finished. No one is ever done. Some people might become more stubborn and say that they're set in their ways, but I choose to approach life with a mentality that embraces the concept that I'm always going to be changing, and we will always be changing. And as long as we grow together, that's the important thing.
Yeah, and this song, I think, really is kind of emphasizing that subtle or drawn out like metamorphosis, so to speak.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that because it has the word metamorphosis in it.
Yeah, like I think more than once. I can pull up the lyrics here. I have them.
Yeah, I
should remember this.
I definitely calling myself out.
I know it happens at least once. I should know this like the back of my fucking hand.
Happens twice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Dan pushed really hard for this to be a single. It was actually the first one where he gave me feedback, and he's like, "Yeah, this is the one. You got to do this." And I'm thinking,
doing it as a third single, I think definitely makes more sense than if you had started with it. Because
it would completely alienate.
Impression,
it would have made representative.
Yeah, it would have been like, "This is what you're picking? Huh? Okay."
Yeah, this is like pretty chill.
But as a third single kind of mix up to say, hey, don't worry guys, we've got layers. I'm a complicated person. That definitely makes more sense here.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see to hear, I guess. I know that there are going to be haters, and this will be
slow is bad, and they'll be goddamn right to say it.
Okay, fair enough. And you know what? And you're entitled to your opinion.
I'm fucking with you.
I just accidentally punched my mic stand, so not out of rage to you, Kyle.
Damn. Fine, I'll dial back the humor. God, everyone's a critic.
Yeah. You are. You're criticizing me. I'm getting offensive here, man. No. I'm totally open to it, and I know that this will be divisive, and in a sense, that's what I hope makes the statement of putting this as a single stronger. Of some people are going to fucking hate it, and some people are going to say, "Oh, this is lovely. I don't like metal, but I like this," and that's totally fine. I've been there before.
If there's one thing I could say that does kind of, I don't know, it bothered me about the song is, like, the very, very end has these very like harsh like notes was it like a piano or something? Not quite a piano, but what's the instrument at the end of this one? I should
know this. I should look it up. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know that Dan was using some kind of very kind of piercing harp noises.
Piercing is a good word for it.
Yeah. That was intentionally done to be sharp and shrill like that, to kind of make you feel a little bit like you're drowning, like that's the last. But once again, I have to be careful with what I say about this.
Scary thoughts you're putting out there.
It's an intentional segue into the next song. We did it a couple times. We did it a couple times on the album. At the end of Coral Throne, there is a I don't exactly remember the name of the term for this, but it's kind of just like a metric tempo shift that happens modulation. To bring. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Metric modulation at the end of Coral Throne to bring us up to the tempo of Worth My Salt. And there was the kind of lullaby baby cooing ending that happens at the end.
There's
of
a lot of unique
Firmament.
endings to songs with the the baby and this, and then all the stuff at the end of the last song that we'll get to. It was just one of those little things that stood out to me here.
Yeah, because I discussed this with Dan when we were discussing the different options that we had in order to how to approach this album, and if we wanted to make it like a continuous piece of music versus something that actually has punctuated stops in between the songs. And we kind of reached a middle ground with the ones that I wanted to flow into the next song. We did that several times, and there are several songs that have the hard stop. And you'll notice that between the acts, they are separated intentionally. And within the acts, there are several songs that lead into the next one, because I like listening to albums as a whole. I know that some people like listening to songs individually. Some people listen to a single song hundreds of times. I'm not that kind.
Known to happen. Yeah, many such cases.
I'm not that kind of person. I like to listen to an album, and so I can't force anyone to sit down and listen to a continuous single piece of music. I mean, if I wanted to do that, I would have done this as a single continuous piece of music intentionally. But I did want there to be some a handful of little segues that tie a song into the next one musically and thematically as well, to be kind of listened to together as like a 1-2. And so that's what that kind of piercing sound at the end is. And from a technical standpoint, I actually asked him to do that quite loud because this is a little bit embarrassing, but I didn't record the end of the clean guitar with a long enough outro hold of the notes. It just kind of stopped, and I had so I did have Damien kind of artificially extend. Yeah, I didn't think about it in the moment because I was going to do some more acoustic work on top of it, and then when you are recording a million different things, it kind of just fell by the wayside, and I realized, oh shit, the song just kind of ends. The note doesn't ring out in the way that I wanted it to. So I asked Dan to incorporate that into a bit of the ending segue of that, and especially have these kind of long piercing notes. And that's something that he chose, that sound, and I thought it worked. But also at the same time, I can totally see why that would be a thing to criticize in the song, because I know it takes it away from the end of the song if you're listening only as a song. But if you're connecting it into the next song, I think that draws them together.
Yeah, I get that. To what you said, like, I like the gaps, like the intentional stops that you put in the album when it's not all flowing into each other. I think it works really well for listening to it as a whole.
Great. No, thank you. And yeah, I was curious about how you guys approach this stuff. Like, do you generally listen to whole albums?
I don't, but
no.
When I have, like, when we do the show and like we're gonna review the album, well, I'm supposed to listen to the whole album.
Yeah.
Which is not the same as, I'm just casually finding stuff. I am a child of the Spotify radio. I like it. Sometimes I find new songs. I like the song. I'm happy. Maybe I will check out who did it. Maybe I will check out in what context it was. And maybe I'll just, but it's weird that I find it hard, not hard, but like every time I listen to a full album, there's like an 85% chance that I will never listen to that full album again, because I just saved the 2 songs that are actually worth it for me and move on. Very few people put the work, in my book, to make an album more than the sum of its parts. When it's actually, when you find an album that is actually, you get more out of it from listening to it in full than from listening to the songs in whatever context, that's great. It's not the default. Doesn't happen a lot. Even people that say, oh, we made this concept album, and sometimes they don't really put on the work, and the songs don't shine more for being in that album specifically. Sometimes the album has a lot of great songs, and I end up making my own playlist because I don't think they nailed it with the album, which is something that I know you would understand. It's not that common, but I've done it a couple times. But mostly, I'm not like the old metalheads that are like, oh, I'm going to check out this release. Let's listen to the full album. I will check out the most popular song. That's me.
Hey, but fair enough. I mean, that's the way that a lot of the listeners are going these days, and a lot of that has to do with just the general style of how things are being released, singles, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for me, I usually like to do more of a full album type of thing. For me, especially doing the podcast now, I want to like look at it as like, this is the complete work made by this artist. I want to have like the proper context for it as I try to be more of a serious journalist content creator. But even beyond that, like if I just pull up Spotify and I'll like type in an artist I like, and maybe I'll just click on an album I like, and then I'll just play that album through, because that's kind of just the way it's set up. I'm either doing that, or if I'm being really lazy, I'll just say, okay, play the top 10 songs, because that's easy and they're probably going to mostly be good, except for when the popular songs are the shitty ones because people have bad taste. But that's another conversation. I'm not usually just a spam one song over and over again type of guy. That does happen from time to time. If there's like a song that really, really stands out to me and I do want to spam it over and over again. I'm not much of a making playlists kind of guy. I have a couple that I've made, but it's not really my main way of listening. Usually these days I will put on a full album. If it's an album I've listened to a bunch, I might skip to like my favorite songs. I am a fan of Spotify letting you just like click like the check mark next to a song. Like, oh yes, I like this one. Yeah. That's really handy, especially when it comes to like talking about stuff on the podcast or whatever. And be like, oh yeah, these were my favorites, and it's just like boom, it's right there. If I wasn't paying attention to like the song titles before, but that's more my way of going about it. But I don't just like split it off and say I'm only going to listen to these. Like I'll still listen to the full album.
Yeah, I know. I can tell you that for your album, I've only listened to it in full several times. First, because I knew we were going to have this talk eventually. Yeah. So I knew that I was going to give it an actual active listening. But also, even when the singles came out and everyone was like, oh, we're going to check out the single, I still just listened to the album in full. I haven't tried, honestly, with your album, listening to songs by themselves. Because from the first listen, you get that little flow thing. And it feels like it is like it feels to me like your unit of work was the album and not the songs. Yes, so I just
and that's exactly my intention with it. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I know that it's not a small album. I know that it's 65 minutes long. It's a big undertaking to do that.
I consider that normal. People complain about album lengths. I think people are just too whiny, and I have pure brain rot. But come on, it's 1 hour. Yeah. It's the same as it's like it's the human unit of measure we'd agree with. It's 1 unit. It's not long. Come on, people.
I think in a previous conversation that we had at one point, Jake, like you had asked like what people think about like an ideal album length is, or if there's something that's too long. Yeah. And I think I mentioned that one of my like all-time favorite albums is like 80 minutes long or some shit. That's Sagas by Equilibrium. Yeah, that's a great fucking amazing album. And it's long as shit, but it's all really good, and I don't want to take anything away from it. So, like, obviously that's a really hard thing to do. To make an album that good, clearly they struggle with it too. That's another conversation. But I can also understand, like, hey, brevity is the soul of wit and all that. So it's an eternal
but sometimes
struggle.
Sometimes you're not trying to be witty.
Yeah, you just have to work because you don't want to betray your work by artificially setting it into like it has to be this length, because whether an album feels too long or feels too short has barely anything to do with how much time it takes to play. It's what is happening. Are you engaged? Then it's not gonna feel long or boring. Are you everything goes too fast, like things don't repeat enough, or you don't leave enough room for people to process what just happened? Maybe it feels too short. Maybe it feels like, hey, it went away so fast, and it doesn't really matter as much if it's an hour long, if it's 20 minutes long, if it's 3 hours long. It's what are you doing with that time? And you should work more with like making sure that it feels correct and not that it's hitting the arbitrary target. And also, one of my favorite songs of all time is 30 minutes long. So,
which one is that?
It's X-Japan's Art of Life.
I don't know if I've heard that.
It's 30. The album is just that song. It's 30 minutes long. You can either listen to the recording or one of the live version. Both are fantastic. They're slightly different. It's a fantastic song, and if you listen to that, it will reveal to you that everything I work on is just an attempt to copy that song.
Okay, all right.
You're revealing too much about where it all comes from, Fernando.
Yeah, like
telling us how the sausage is made.
Yeah,
I'm excited for this insight into your workings, your inner workings, your brain.
Yeah, and even though it's an X-Japan song, the lyrics are in English, so you can follow along with the lyrics. So you get a bit more out of it. But even if you don't understand what they're saying, it's a great, fantastic song.
Oh, great! I'm pumped to check it out.
It's worth it. The fact that it's called Art of Life and it's 30 minutes long, and it actually earns. It deserves all that. Like
that's a lot to live up to, but yeah,
it's a lot to live up to. But they pull it off. And speaking
of long things,
songs,
let's talk about Embers on Our Shore, the last long song on this here album of yours.
Yeah, the longest, the best song on the album.
The best song.
Best for last. You got to do it.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think about the length of this?
I didn't know it was the longest song until I looked at the times.
Well, 2 minutes of it is like ship sounds. So does it really count? I mean,
yes, it does. But it's cool. It's cool. I think it's cool, and I like. I'm jumping a bit, but I really like the piano. Yeah, this is the one, right? The piano fire.
Yeah. It's got the burning piano outro.
Piano.
So I originally was going to do the outro of this song like with acoustic guitars and have it. I had a spoken word poem that I was going to read over it, and it was going to be called "From the Shallows of the Mantle." The title
That's
of the album. That's the
name of the album.
Yeah, that was going to be the first line of the poem, and I kind of decided that wasn't really the feeling that I wanted to go for. Mm-hmm. Here. I thought that this, selfishly, I had already done so much recording of guitars and stuff that I was just not ready to do a long, drawn out acoustic bit. Recording acoustics is a bit of a pain in the ass. I'm laughing because
laugh you just did that.
I'm laughing because and Fernando knows what I'm about to talk about here, but I know that you just did that Stormblast acoustic version, and and I know that was probably a huge undertaking for you and for everyone.
I just know what it is. I know what you're talking about exactly.
Yeah, like you have to mic everything, even if you have a plug, and just any noise that you make, especially fret noise on an acoustic, breathing, creaking in your chair, it comes through, and it's tough to keep things consistent. And so I actually didn't do a lot of acoustic recording on this album that I intentionally, or that I went into it with the intent to do. I just did a lot of clean guitars, and honestly, recording clean guitars is a pain in the ass too. I don't know. I'm not the most precise guitar player, and so I have to do a lot of takes. and when you're recording like quad tracked clean guitars, where like little artifacts of sound come through.
That's when I would tell you to not quad track clean guitars. You solve the problem.
You know what? I will take that into consideration for next time, because that was really the persistent, pebble in my shoe or thorn in my side or whatever.
Yeah.
There are some sounds from fret noises and all that sort of stuff that came through there are clean guitars on every single song on this album. And so, that was a bit of a challenge. I like playing clean stuff. I actually want to do more of that in the future. I want to do more gentle sounding music, even if it's dark stuff, kind of like Abalone. But point being, I wasn't ready to do the ending of this. And I thought this is a perfect opportunity to have the burning piano thing. So I had the guitar melodies that I had originally written for that. And I said, Dan, make this into a better piano version. And the first thing, and I know that I touched on this earlier in this talk, but I'm fulfilling my promise to close that loop right now. The first version of the outro that he gave me was a very Dan thing.
Oh, and I know exactly what you mean.
It was very cool, but like it was very avant-garde.
Yeah.
It was very, I think, challenging from like a musical standpoint, like from a listener standpoint to the music.
You're
like
so
it was
polite.
No, it was a weird piece, and I thought it was really cool. And at the same time, I'm gonna have to show it to you guys at some point because I think it's still really cool. But I did ask him to, hey, can you dial this back, and can you keep it like more within the melodic confines of what I'm actually looking for in the notes that I wrote. And he did, and he kind of took the melody that is present in the clean part of the middle part of this song, and had it incorporated through various interweaving piano and harp noises. And per my instruction, I basically had him go from more structured and more clearly piano to more chaos and burning of the piano as it goes on. So it kind of goes from something that's beautiful and serene into this dull roar, and then ends. And I personally think that's if I'm allowed to toot my own horn here, I think it's a powerful way to end the album. I also know that people are going to listen to it and go, okay, Yari.
No, I like it. I really like that, the way it came out in the end. I was also like looking forward to listening to what you guys were going to do with the burning piano, because I knew that.
So when you talked about burning a piano, did you actually burn a piano, or is this a metaphor?
It's Can I? Do you mind if I
go for
nerd
it.
about it? So there is a thing. People take upright pianos and set them on fire, and you can play on it for a while. And as it burns, the wood of the whole thing starts like doing all those noises, like on when you listen to a fire pit, like the little creaks and bops and things. And eventually it starts heating up the harp, which is the main thing inside the piano that holds all the strings, that's made of metal, and start expanding, and all the strings start spinning as well, and everything starts sounding a bit out of tune, and eventually it breaks. And it's been used here and there in a couple of songs. You might have seen a GIF of someone playing on a burning piano on a beach.
Yeah, like there's memes of like the guy with the piano on fire.
Yeah,
people are like, "Oh man, they went so hard on this song."
Yeah, so that's something that people actually do, and there's a virtual instrument of it that you use, so that you don't actually need to get a whole piano and burn it, which it's
but
very
that would
expensive.
be sick, though.
But it's
I know, but it's out of my budget, Kyle.
Yeah. So you get the VST, and I think it has the one that Dan used. I think it has a slider for how much on fire it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, can you just like ramp this up?
Yeah, you can degrade it over the performance, which is what would happen in real life, right? As you're playing, it gets worse and worse. Eventually, some of the strings break, and you get all those sounds. And it's so cool. It's such a cool texture.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I like it.
I was really excited to get him to use this again because he did do this on a previous album, and it was just a great opportunity. It seemed so thematically appropriate as well. The burning piano on a beach to finish off this song called Embers on Our Shore, and so it was perfect. We had to do it, and I know that when we first talked about it, Fernando, I basically told you, I revealed that I padded out the length of the last song on the album to make it a long song with a 2-minute piano outro. And
is it so you could get over the Soldiers of the Wasteland time limit there?
Yeah, I got to get on that longest song playlist, man.
Okay.
I need that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Very specific dopamine.
Yeah, exactly.
Hit.
Yeah, like 4 people know what that is. Know what that hit is. I'm sure more people know what that playlist is.
It makes it hit all the harder, Jay.
Exactly. I'm chasing that fucking dragon, man. That's the first time I chased a dragon on this album. There's no other dragons. So this song, it's long. It's artificially padded, yes, with the outro, but the outro is part of it, and it's part of the ending of the album. It's the denouement of the album. I needed to have that there as a moment of reflection. Hopefully, if anyone connects with it at below a surface level, and I hope that they do. That's that moment to kind of reflect on what happened in the last hour, and do any of these concepts resonate with me? And if so, or if not, that's totally fine. It's a chance to have the listener be with their thoughts. And once again, I know now that I'm saying this out loud, it sounds pretty pretentious, but I appreciate stuff like this as a listener, as when I'm listening to stuff. And so this is kind of like this whole album is like my kind of love letter to the things that I love about the genre, and that I don't hear too much in the genre anymore.
Yeah, I think I agree. I like having that final space with this album. Like,
yeah,
I didn't like, my first impression was not that it was padded out. It just felt appropriate because it's not the ending of the song, it's the ending of the album.
Yes.
So in proportion, it doesn't feel like overly extended, and it's a nice moment to like fade out of it in a calm way and process the whole thing. I think it works for this very well.
Yeah, thank you. And this is a pretty fast song too. Like it's a big song without the outro. It starts very mellow with vocals happening as the very first thing, which I've never done before, and ramps up into a pretty riffy power metal song. I mean, it's got a big hooky chorus and some proggy moments, lots of shredding, kind of bit of an unconventional structure. But overall, this is the song about acceptance. It's the bittersweet but optimistic and resolved conclusion to the themes on the album.
It does one of my favorite things in power metal-y songs is where like you repeat the last chorus, but with more like noodly guitar stuff underneath that last chorus, just to really up the ante.
I'm so happy that resonated with you, man. I'm so happy about that because I really wanted to make sure that there was room in the mix for that little noodly bit to come through, because that, of course, is the bit from the intro that just kind of comes back. It's the callback to the start of the song, or part of the start of the song.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah. This, just to kind of wrap up the themes concept of this, I know I've talked about it's about acceptance, but this is more about like radical acceptance of the things that can't be changed. This was written to be the swan song for Viathyn. My intent that it would have been the last thing that Viathyn released, probably.
It kind of it has a lot of like accepting death types of vibes to it, which is kind of my initial reading of the lyrics, which it feels more somber than just like accepting everything.
Yeah, I mean, and there is a lot about that. I did put a lot of death imagery in there on purpose. It's to kind of signify for people, hey, don't be disappointed that things have come to an end, because it happened. The legacy is there. It's that adage about it's better to have loved and lost compared to never loving at all. And but when I was writing this, I was kind of bitter This comes from a bitter, sardonic part of me, where I felt like I was doing all of the writing for this, which I was, but that's, this is a way for me to express that, I wish I wasn't. It felt like it should have been a group effort, and that's part of the reason why I actually pursued this solo. Once again, but this is kind of my way of expressing that bitterness without actually truly feeling it. I just needed to recognize that was there. And so in the verses, like part of the lyrics, I've actually made a lot of, maybe made a bit of martyr of myself. And I talked about various funeral rites in relation to the creation process. The coins on the eyes, the silver on the tongue, the binding of your limbs in linen, the carving of a stone bust in one's image. And I wanted to leave a bit of that spiciness that I was feeling in there because it's authentic to how I was feeling. But it's also a stark contrast to the chorus lyrics, which are very aware and accepting and aware of the permanence of, the art beyond the artist or beyond the band. And, there's a kind of secondary level in this, obviously, Ravenous broke up. I pulled the plug on that, last year. And so it kind of ties into that as well of like, yeah, you can look back at the way that lots of things went down in different parts of your life. And as it comes to music and bands ending and all that sort of stuff, that doesn't mean that I'm not still happy that the band happened, that the music was there, that the effort was there.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want that bitterness to come through as I'm bitter, but as more of a recognizing of a recognition of, it's okay to have these feelings, but you have to accept that there are things you can't change.
Yeah, I think having the chorus of this be representing that, like that more positive angle of, like it says, don't mourn this. The ashes tell the Lord, kind of saying like, hey, this is going to persist, and that's okay in its own, even though it is dead in its own way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if it necessarily plays into what I was going to have this be for Viathyn to be the kind of last song, because who knows what's to come in the future. I mean, like I said, I talk to Thomas Lev regularly. I'd love to collaborate with him some more in the future. I love the way that we work together. But given the limitations that we have with, we're family, man. It's tough. It's tough sometimes to make that space. But so I don't know if the theme necessarily resonates as strongly with this as a solo effort, because I am continuing with this. I mean, that's my hope. I've already done a ton of not really songwriting, but I have a lot of ideas and a lot of directions that I want to take this. So in a way, this song may mark a departure from this kind of Prog Power song for me, because like I said, I was writing this whole album to be for Viathyn. I mean, I'll probably move towards maybe more overtly progressive stuff, branch out in different directions. I want to do more stuff in the vein of Abalone. And I know that'll, maybe disappoint certain power metal listeners, but I feel that that's where I am in my life,
It raises an interesting point of like, where does Panthalassan go when it becomes, we'll say Panthalassan 2 as opposed to Viathyn 3 or 2.5 or whatever?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's a good question. The style's already pretty esoteric, so I know I'm not going to be like, getting popular with it, which is totally fine, because I look to this as more of a creative outlet and a challenge rather than something that is, striving for recognition or plays or what have you. It's an opportunity for me to explore different musical outlets, and really I'm looking at this new bouzouki that I have sitting next to me, and I'm thinking about getting a banjo, and I know that my brother's got a mandolin I can borrow, and I've got this Korg synthesizer sitting on the desk.
Is coming along good, boys.
But I mean, look at how well that stuff can be incorporated into prog metal. I mean, I don't know if you guys are super familiar with the band Wuthering, but their second album has a ton of slide guitar and stuff in it, and it fits.
Yeah.
There's a way that you can fit. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about music that progresses, is that, you're challenging something, you're challenging an idea, and maybe that's challenging to the listener of, well, what fits in metal? And maybe that's the kind of stuff that I want to explore.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibility space that probably goes underexplored there. And that is kind of like the fun side of doing either like prog metal or folk metal, is like you can get weirder with it. in ways that more, we'll say, traditional power metal wouldn't usually want to mess with. And if they do it, they're going to do it just a little bit. Like right before we jumped on here, I was watching this Blind Guardian video, and they had here's them recording the bagpipes for Somewhere Far Beyond. Really cool to see that. But you don't see a lot of those mix-ups in standard power metal, which if you're going to go beyond that, bring out the mandolin or whatever it is you want to do. Fuck it, go for it.
Yeah.
We mentioned Ensiferum earlier. They've got there's a banjo solo in one of their songs for a while back that's sick as hell. It's weird that it happens, but it's sick as hell.
That's on the song Stone Cold Metal. Yeah. It's on From Afar album. I remember when that came out, I was like near the end of university. I remember walking around in winter in Edmonton. It's like minus fucking 40. And I'm listening to that banjo solo and I'm going like, hey man, this is cool.
Yeah. Like I feel like I haven't seen many metal bands do stuff like that again, even in Spharum. And I'm like, that's one of those things that sticks most in my head about that album. It's like, oh yeah, it has a cool banjo solo on that one song.
Yeah.
So hey, if you become a country metal band next with Panthalassan, then go for it.
I mean, who knows, man? And at the same time, I was going to say this earlier about I made this album long on purpose because I want to give people and myself a lot to chew on because it takes me a long time. I have friends and I know people in the industry that are very prolific and they can, pop out an album in 6 months. And I can't do that. Even if I didn't have so many commitments in my life with, of course, being a dad, I still think I would struggle with getting things out efficiently. And I know that everyone's on a different schedule, right? But it's going to be a while. I'm not going to have like a follow-up next year. It's just not happening. So I wanted to make this big so that there's a lot to digest.
I respect that.
And hopefully it'll satiate.
It's a good move.
It doesn't feel just like, disposable content that's just going to go and be part of the machine and then say, what's next?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that kind of ties into a lot of what we were talking about with the way that the industry has changed and the way that certain bands are approaching, releasing only singles as opposed to things that are fitting within the album structure. And yeah, I'm not sure if maybe that would be a good way to kind of bridge gaps to stay relevant, I guess. But, that's not necessarily a concept that I'm holding in as something that's super high importance.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to you right now because you don't really need to do that. You're just doing what you want, which is a freedom that sometimes people don't have. Because people forget that you can be a professional musician that is successful and maybe the things they are doing to keep that success and their livelihood might not be exactly what they actually want to be doing.
Yeah.
At least not 100%.
And it's a difficult genre to be trying to even make any kind of a, economic impact on your life. I don't make money from music,
The economic impact is it costs you money.
Yes.
Oh yeah. And I mean, like this album, I gotta say, with previous experiences being in a band where you can kind of split the costs among people is I'm seeing the contrast in that now, having done, obviously all of the funding for this. And I mean, that's not,
I noticed on Bandcamp, you even put that it's funded by you.
Which
I feel like most people don't bother mentioning, but I noticed that. I'm like,
I forgot that I put that there and I saw it yesterday. I'm going to take that out. That was kind of a joke to myself. But
it's funny though.
It's like when we say that the Power Metal podcast is brought to you by us. Yeah. We are the sponsor.
Hey man, I don't know. I gave you guys $10 maybe 2 times. So it's also coming from me.
You probably got something in return, which is you guys gratitude.
Also, I get the pleasure of being able to discuss this kind of stuff with you guys, and I was saying to Kyle earlier, but this is very meaningful to me that you guys have allowed us to have this conversation, and that this is you're taking up your time and dedicating an episode to this. It's very meaningful to me, so I appreciate it a lot.
I really like how this evolved into having bands or artists talked about the music in detail and give this creating this space for just having the commentary track that you can then use and chop off sections of the recording and share with people that might help as well. I like that we can provide that space because it's something that
snip this into little TikToks, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned like a commentary track. It's like, oh, it's like on an old DVD extras thing.
Yes, exactly.
You get so much more this way. It's the fucking Lord of the Rings appendices of power metal right here, boys. Let's go.
Yeah, that's the aim. Bring back DVDs. Man, I miss bonus features so much.
Now, I remember like trying to find Easter eggs in DVD menus.
Yeah, that was
like little hidden options to like shitty deleted scenes or whatever.
Or just waiting because the menus had video on them, and they could make a loop. And sometimes, if you waited enough, they did something special, or a new button would show up if you waited enough in that menu.
Yeah, I always love the Star Wars ones of how they like integrated like the menu options and scenes into like the environments from the movies.
Yeah,
but that's me as a child of the 2000s.
No, I love them. I had them. Like, it's so cool, so cool. So we can do that. We give these spaces, and we have these commentary tracks, and seriously, like I think like it's not just for us that maybe eventually artists that we have do these conversations can just take this and share it. Like, hey, do you want to know more about the album? Here, I have 2 hours of me talking about it. Yeah. Then maybe they wouldn't have done it on their own. Like, and it's like specifically a deep dive, song by song. So it's kind of special. And we love doing it. And we get to know all the details first before even the people listen to it. So that's cool.
You're drinking the juice, man.
Yeah.
Yes, well, thank you, Jake, for coming on and doing this deep dive into a very personal work of yours that I think we like quite a bit, and hopefully our audience does as well. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah.
Definitely. Kyle, Fernando, thank you. Sorry, I am speaking over you guys. I'm sorry, I didn't know if it was my turn or not.
It's fine. It's fine. Just talk. You start talking over someone, you just keep going.
Okay, fair enough. How about Fernando? You say your thing, and then I'll say my thing.
I'll say my thing. Jake, thanks a lot for coming again. That means that we are good enough at this that we're not that annoying because you keep coming back. That's always great. And this was awesome. We learned a lot about you. And I hope our listeners too, and they will enjoy your album.
Fernando, Kyle, thank you both so much for having me here. It's as I said, this is very meaningful to me. Not just this album, but to be able to talk about it. And I guess this is my first real time going into deep depth about this. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to do that. And hey, I always love talking with you guys.
Awesome. All right. Well, you know what's coming next. I think you should just tell all of our lovely people to stay powerful.
Hey, all you lovely people, stay powerful.
Yeah, you heard the man. Stay powerful. Listen to the album.